Library Śrīmad Bhāgavatam, Bhagavata Purana, Canto 12, The Age of Deterioration Chapter 1 The Degraded Dynasties of Kali Yuga. The 12th canto of Śrīmad Bhāgavatam begins with Srila Sukadeva Goswami predicting the kings of the earth who will appear in the future during the age of Kali. Then he gives a description of the numerous faults of the age, after which the presiding goddess of the earth sarcastically berates the foolish members of the kingly order who perpetually try to conquer her. Next Sukadeva Goswami explains the 4 varieties of material annihilation, and then he gives his final advice to Maharaja Pariksit. Thereafter King Pariksit is bitten by the snake bird Taksaka and leaves this world. Suta Goswami concludes his narration of Śrīmad Bhāgavatam to the sages at Naimisaranya forest by enumerating the teachers of the various branches of the Vedas and Puranas, relating the pious history of Markandeya Rsi, glorifying the Supreme Lord in his universal form and in his expansion as the Sun God, summarizing the topics discussed in this literature, and offering final benedictions and prayers. The first chapter of this canto briefly describes the future kings of the dynasty of Magadha and how they become degraded because of the influence of the age of Kali. There were 20 kings who ruled in the family of Puru, in the dynasty of the sun god, counting from Uparakara Vasu to Puranjaya. After Puranjaya, the lineage of this dynasty will become corrupted. Following Puranjaya there will be 5 kings known as the Pratyotanas, who are then followed by the Sishanagas, the Mauryas, the Sungas, the Kanvas, 30 kings of the Andhra nation, 7 Abhiras, 10 Gardabas, 16 Kankas, 8 Yavanas, 14 Turaskas, 10 Gorindas, 11 Mallas, 5 Kila monarchs and 13 Balakas. After this, different regions will be ruled over at the same time by 7 Andhra kings, 7 Kaushalas, the kings of Vidura, and the Nisadas. Then the power of rulership in the countries of Magadha and so forth will fall to kings who are no better than Sudras and Mukhas and are totally absorbed in irreligion. Texts 1-2, Sukadeva Goswami said, the last king mentioned in our previous enumeration of the future rulers of the Magadha dynasty was Puranjaya, who will take birth as the descendant of Brihadratha. Puranjaya's minister Sunaka will assassinate the king and install his own son, Pradyota, on the throne. The son of Pradyota will be Pulaka, his son will be Visakayupa, and his son will be Rajaka. Text 3, the son of Rajaka will be Nandavardhana, and thus in the Pradyotana dynasty there will be 5 kings, who will enjoy the earth for 138 years. Text 4, Nandavardhana will have a son named Sishanaga, and his son will be known as Kakavarna. The son of Kakavarna will be Ksimadharma, and the son of Ksimadharma will be Kshatrajna. Text 5, the son of Kshatrajna will be Vidasara, and his son will be Ajatasattu. Ajatasattu will have a son named Darbaka, and his son will be Ajaya. Text 6-8, Ajaya will father a second Nandavardhana, whose son will be Mahanandi. Are best of the Kurus, these 10 kings of the Sishanaga dynasty will rule the earth for a total of 360 years during the age of Kali. My dear Pariksit, King Mahanandi will father a very powerful son in the womb of a Sudra woman. He will be known as Nanda and will be the master of millions of soldiers and fabulous wealth. He will wreak havoc among the Kshatriyas, and from that time onward virtually all kings will be irreligious Sudras. Text 9, that lord of Mahapadma, King Nanda, will rule over the entire earth just like a second Parasurama, and no one will challenge his authority. Text 10, he will have 8 sons, headed by Sumalya, who will control the earth as powerful kings for 100 years. Text 11, a certain Brahmana, Kanakya, will betray the trust of King Nanda and his 8 sons and will destroy their dynasty. In their absence the Mauryas will rule the world as the age of Kali continues. Text 12, this Brahmana will enthrone Chandragupta, whose son will be named Virazara. The son of Virazara will be Asokavardhana. Text 13, Asokavardhana will be followed by Suyasa, whose son will be Sangata. His son will be Salzuka, Salzuka's son will be Somasarma, and Somasarma's son will be Satathanva. His son will be known as Brihadratha. Text 14, are best of the Kurus, these 10 Maurya kings will rule the earth for 137 years of the Kali Yuga. Texts 15-17, my dear King Pariksit, Agnimitra will follow as king, and then Sujastha. Sujastha will be followed by Vashumitra, Bhadraka, and the son of Bhadraka, Pulinda. Then the son of Pulinda, named Gosa, will rule, followed by Vajramitra, Bhagavata, and Devabhuti. In this way, O most eminent of the Kuru heroes, 10 Sunga kings will rule over the earth for more than 100 years. Then the earth will come under the subjugation of the kings of the Kanva dynasty, who will manifest very few good qualities. Text 18, Vasudeva, an intelligent minister coming from the Kanva family, will kill the last of the Sunga kings, a lusty debauchee named Devabhuti, and assume rulership himself. Text 19, the son of Vasudeva will be Bhumitra, and his son will be Narayana. These kings of the Kanva dynasty will rule the earth for 345 more years of the Kali Yuga. Text 20, the last of the Kanvas, Susarma, will be murdered by his own servant, Bali, a low-class Sudra of the Andhra race. This most degraded Maharaja Bali will have control over the earth for some time. Texts 21-26, the brother of Bali, named Krishna, will become the next ruler of the earth. His son will be Sandakarna, and his son will be Purnamasa. The son of Purnamasa will be Lambodara, who will father Maharaja Sibalaka. From Sibalaka will come Meghasvati, whose son will be Adamana. The son of Adamana will be Anastakarma. His son will be Halia, and his son will be Talaka. The son of Talaka will be Purazabiru, and following him Sanandana will become king. Sanandana will be followed by Kakura and the 8 Bhas, among whom Shivasvati will be a great subduer of enemies. The son of Shivasvati will be Gumati. His son will be Puraman, whose son will be Madasira. His son will be Shivaskanda, and his son will be Yajnasri. The son of Yajnasri will be Vijaya, who will have 2 sons, Kandravina and Lomadhi. These 30 kings will enjoy sovereignty over the earth for a total of 456 years, O favorite son of the Kurus. Text 27, then will follow 7 kings of the Abira race from the city of Avabriti, and then 10 Gardavas. After them, 16 kings of the Kankas will rule and will be known for their excessive greed. Text 28, 8 Yavanas will then take power, followed by 14 Turaskas, 10 Gorindas and 11 kings of the Malla dynasty. Texts 29-31, these Abhiras, Gardabas and Kankas will enjoy the earth for 1099 years, and the Mallas will rule for 300 years. When all of them have died off, there will appear in the city of Kila a dynasty of kings consisting of Bhutananda, Vanjiri, Sijanandi, Sijanandi's brother Yasanandi, and Pravaraka. These kings of Kila will hold sway for a total of 106 years. Texts 32-33, the Kilakilas will be followed by their 13 sons, the Balakas, and after them King Puspamitra, his son Dharmitra, 7 Andhras, 7 Kaushalas and also kings of the Vidura and Nisada provinces will separately rule in different parts of the world. Text 34, there will then appear a king of the Magadhas named Visvasvarji, who will be like another Puranjaya. He will turn all the civilized classes into low-class, uncivilized men in the same category as the Pulandas, Yadas, and Madrakas. Text 35, foolish King Visvasvarji will maintain all the citizens in ungodliness and will use his power to completely disrupt the Kshatriya order. From his capital of Padmavati he will rule that part of the earth extending from the source of the Ganga to Prayaga. Text 36, at that time the Brahmanas of such provinces as Saurashtra, Avanti, Abira, Sura, Arbuda and Malava will forget all their regulative principles, and the members of the royal order in these places will become no better than Sudras. Text 37, the land along the Sindhu River, as well as the districts of Chandrabhaga, Kanti, and Kasmira, will be ruled by Sudras, fallen Brahmanas and meat-eaters. Having given up the path of Vedic civilization, they will have lost all spiritual strength. Text 38, there will be many such uncivilized kings ruling at the same time, O King Pariksit, and they will all be uncharitable, possessed of fierce tempers, and great devotees of religion and falsity. Texts 39-40, these barbarians in the guise of kings will devour the citizenry, murdering innocent women, children, cows and brahmanas and coveting the wives and property of other men. They will be erratic in their moods, have little strength of character and be very short-lived. Indeed, not purified by any Vedic rituals and lacking in the practice of regulative principles, they will be completely covered by the modes of passion and ignorance. Text 41, the citizens governed by these low-class kings will imitate the character, behavior and speech of their rulers. Harassed by their leaders and by each other, they will all suffer ruination. Library Śrīmad Bhāgavatam, Bhagavata Purana, Canto 12, The Age of Deterioration Chapter 2 The Symptoms of Kali Yuga. This chapter relates that, when the bad qualities of the age of Kali will increase to an intolerable level, the Supreme Personality of Godhead will descend as Kalki to destroy those who are fixed in irreligion. After that, a new Satya Yuga will begin. As the age of Kali progresses, all good qualities of men diminish and all impure qualities increase. Atheistic systems of so-called religion become predominant, replacing the codes of Vedic law. The kings become just like highway bandits, the people in general become dedicated to low occupations, and all the social classes become just like Sudras. All cows become like goats, all spiritual hermitages become like materialistic homes, and family ties extend no further than the immediate relationship of marriage. When the age of Kali has almost ended, the Supreme Personality of Godhead will incarnate. He will appear in the village Sambala, in the home of the exalted Brahmana Vishnuyasa, and will take the name Kalki. He will mount his horse Devdatta and, taking his sword in hand, will roam about the earth killing millions of bandits in the guise of kings. Then the signs of the next Satya Yuga will begin to appear. When the moon, sun and the planet Brihaspati enter simultaneously into one constellation and conjoin in the lunar mansion Pusya, Satya Yuga will begin. In the order of Satya, Treta, Dvapara, and Kali, the cycle of 4 ages rotates in the society of living entities in this universe. The chapter ends with a brief description of the future dynasties of the sun and moon coming from Vaivasvata Manu in the next Satya Yuga. Even now 2 saintly kshatriyas are living who at the end of this Kali Yuga will reinitiate the pious dynasties of the sun god, Vivasvan, and the moon god, Kandra. One of these kings is Devapi, a brother of Maharaja Santanu, and the other is Maru, a descendant of Ikshvaku. They are biding their time incognito in a village named Kalapa. Text 1, Sukadeva Goswami said, "Then, O king, religion, truthfulness, cleanliness, tolerance, mercy, duration of life, physical strength and memory will all diminish day by day because of the powerful influence of the age of Kali." Text 2, in Kali Yuga, wealth alone will be considered the sign of a man's good birth, proper behavior and fine qualities. And law and justice will be applied only on the basis of one's power. Text 3, men and women will live together merely because of superficial attraction, and success in business will depend on deceit. Womanliness and manliness will be judged according to one's expertise in sex, and a man will be known as a brahmana just by his wearing a thread. Text 4, a person's spiritual position will be ascertained merely according to external symbols, and on that same basis people will change from one spiritual order to the next. A person's propriety will be seriously questioned if he does not earn a good living. And one who is very clever at juggling words will be considered a learned scholar. Text 5, a person will be judged unholy if he does not have money, and hypocrisy will be accepted as virtue. Marriage will be arranged simply by verbal agreement, and a person will think he is fit to appear in public if he has merely taken a bath. Text 6, a sacred place will be taken to consist of no more than a reservoir of water located at a distance, and beauty will be thought to depend on one's hairstyle. Filling the belly will become the goal of life, and one who is audacious will be accepted as truthful. He who can maintain a family will be regarded as an expert man, and the principles of religion will be observed only for the sake of reputation. Text 7, as the earth thus becomes crowded with a corrupt population, whoever among any of the social classes shows himself to be the strongest will gain political power. Text 8, losing their wives and properties to such avaricious and merciless rulers, who will behave no better than ordinary thieves, the citizens will flee to the mountains and forests. Text 9, harassed by famine and excessive taxes, people will resort to eating leaves, roots, flesh, wild honey, fruits, flowers and seeds. Struck by drought, they will become completely ruined. Text 10, the citizens will suffer greatly from cold, wind, heat, rain and snow. They will be further tormented by quarrels, hunger, thirst, disease and severe anxiety. Text 11, the maximum duration of life for human beings in Kali Yuga will become 50 years. Texts 12 to 16, by the time the age of Kali ends, the bodies of all creatures will be greatly reduced in size, and the religious principles of followers of Varnasrama will be ruined. The path of the Vedas will be completely forgotten in human society, and so-called religion will be mostly atheistic. The kings will mostly be thieves, the occupations of men will be stealing, lying and needless violence, and all the social classes will be reduced to the lowest level of Sudras. Cows will be like goats, spiritual hermitages will be no different from mundane houses, and family ties will extend no further than the immediate bonds of marriage. Most plants and herbs will be tiny, and all trees will appear like dwarf Sami trees. Clouds will be full of lightning, homes will be devoid of piety, and all human beings will have become like asses. At that time, the Supreme Personality of Godhead will appear on the earth. Acting with the power of pure spiritual goodness, he will rescue eternal religion. Text 17, Lord Vishnu, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, the spiritual master of all moving and non-moving living beings, and the Supreme Soul of all, takes birth to protect the principles of religion and to relieve his saintly devotees from the reactions of material work. Text 18, Lord Kalki will appear in the home of the most eminent Brahmana of Sambala village, the great soul Vishnuyasa. Texts 19 to 20, Lord Kalki, the Lord of the universe, will mount his swift horse Devdatta and, sword in hand, travel over the earth exhibiting his 8 mystic opulences and 8 special qualities of Godhead. Displaying his unequaled effulgence and riding with great speed, he will kill by the millions those thieves who have dared dress as kings. Text 21, After all the impostor kings have been killed, the residents of the cities and towns will feel the breezes carrying the most sacred fragrance of the sandalwood paste and other decorations of Lord Vasudeva, and their minds will thereby become transcendently pure. Text 22. When Lord Vasudeva, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, appears in their hearts in his transcendental form of goodness, the remaining citizens will abundantly repopulate the earth. Text 23. When the Supreme Lord has appeared on earth as Kalki, the maintainer of religion, Satya Yuga will begin, and human society will bring forth progeny in the mode of goodness. Text 24. When the moon, the sun and Brihaspati are together in the constellation Karkata, and all three enter simultaneously into the lunar mansion Pusya, at that exact moment the age of Satya, or Krita, will begin. Text 25. Thus I have described all the kings, past, present and future, who belong to the dynasties of the sun and the moon. Text 26. From your birth up to the coronation of King Nanda, 1150 years will pass. Texts 27 to 28. Of the 7 stars forming the constellation of the 7 sages, Pulaha and Kratu are the first to rise in the night sky. If a line running north and south were drawn through their midpoint, whichever of the lunar mansions this line passes through is said to be the ruling asterism of the constellation for that time. The 7 sages will remain connected with that particular lunar mansion for 100 human years. Currently, during your lifetime, they are situated in the nakshatra called Magha. Text 29. The Supreme Lord, Vishnu, is brilliant like the sun and is known as Krishna. When he returned to the spiritual sky, Kali entered this world, and people then began to take pleasure in sinful activities. Text 30. As long as Lord Sri Krishna, the husband of the goddess of fortune, touched the earth with his lotus feet, Kali was powerless to subdue this planet. Text 31. When the constellation of the 7 sages is passing through the lunar mansion Magha, the age of Kali begins. It comprises 1200 years of the demigods. Text 32. When the great sages of the Saptarshi constellation pass from Magha to Purvasadha, Kali will have his full strength, beginning from King Nanda and his dynasty. Text 33. Those who scientifically understand the past declare that on the very day that Lord Sri Krishna departed for the spiritual world, the influence of the age of Kali began. Text 34. After the 1000 celestial years of Kali Yuga, the Satya Yuga will manifest again. At that time the minds of all men will become self-effulgent. Text 35. Thus I have described the royal dynasty of Manu, as it is known on this earth. One can similarly study the history of the Vaisyas, Sudras and Brahmanas living in the various ages. Text 36. These personalities, who were great souls, are now known only by their names. They exist only in accounts from the past, and only their fame remains on the earth. Text 37. Devapi, the brother of Maharaja Santanu, and Maru, the descendant of Ikshvaku, both possess great mystic strength and are living even now in the village of Kalapa. Text 38. At the end of the age of Kali, these 2 kings, having received instruction directly from the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Vasudeva, will return to human society and re-establish the eternal religion of man, characterized by the divisions of Varna and Asrama, just as it was before. Text 39. The cycle of 4 ages, Satya, Treta, Dvapara and Kali, continues perpetually among living beings on this earth, repeating the same general sequence of events. Text 40. My dear King Pariksit, all these kings I have described, as well as all other human beings, come to this earth and stake their claims, but ultimately they all must give up this world and meet their destruction. Text 41. Even though a person's body may now have the designation king, in the end its name will be worms, stool or ashes. What can a person who injures other living beings for the sake of his body know about his own self-interest, since his activities are simply leading him to hell? Text 42. The materialistic king thinks, this unbounded earth was held by my predecessors and is now under my sovereignty. How can I arrange for it to remain in the hands of my sons, grandsons and other descendants? Text 43. Although the foolish accept the body made of earth, water and fire as me and this earth as mine, in every case they have ultimately abandoned both their body and the earth and passed away into oblivion. Text 44. My dear King Pariksit, all these kings who tried to enjoy the earth by their strength were reduced by the force of time to nothing more than historical accounts. Library Śrīmad Bhāgavatam, Bhagavata Purana, Canto 12, The Age of Deterioration Chapter 3 The Bhumi Gita. This chapter describes how the earth took note of the foolishness of the many kings bent on conquering her. It also describes how even though the age of Kali is full of faults, the glorification of the name of Lord Hari destroys them all. Great kings, who are actually just playthings of death, desire to subdue their 6 internal enemies, the 5 senses and the mind, and afterward they imagine they will go on to conquer the earth and all its oceans. Seeing their false hopes, the earth simply laughs, for eventually they all must leave this planet and go elsewhere, as have all the great kings and monarchs of the past. Moreover, after usurping the earth or some part of it, which is actually unconquerable and must in every case be given up, fathers, sons, brothers, friends and relatives quarrel over it. Thus the study of history naturally leads to the conclusion that all worldly achievements are temporary, and this conclusion should give rise to a sense of renunciation. Ultimately, the highest goal of life for any living entity is pure devotion to Lord Krishna, which annihilates all inauspiciousness. In the age of Satya, religion was complete, still possessing its four legs of truth, mercy, austerity and charity. With the coming of each succeeding age, starting with Treta, these religious qualities each diminish by 1/4. In Kali Yuga the legs of religion retain only 1/4 of their power, and even that will be lost with the progress of the age. The mode of goodness is predominant during Satya Yuga, and the mode of passion is predominant during the Treta Yuga. The mixed modes of passion and ignorance are predominant during Dvapara Yuga, and in the age of Kali the mode of ignorance is predominant. Atheism, the smallness and inferiority of all things, and devotion to the genitals and belly are very much evident in the age of Kali. Living entities contaminated by the influence of Kali do not worship the Supreme Lord, Sri Hari, even though they can be freed from all bondage and easily achieve the supreme destination simply by chanting the glories of his name and taking shelter of him. But if somehow or other the Supreme Personality of Godhead becomes manifest within the hearts of the conditioned souls in Kali Yuga, then all faults of place, time and personality inherent in the age will be destroyed. Kali Yuga is an ocean of faults, but it possesses one great quality: simply by the chanting of the name of Krishna, one can be delivered from material association and attain the absolute truth. All that was accomplished in the age of Satya by meditation, in the age of Treta by sacrificial performances and in the age of Dvapara by temple worship is easily gained during the Kali Yuga by the simple process of Hari Kirtana. Text 1. Sukadeva Goswami said, seeing the kings of this earth busy trying to conquer her, the earth herself laughed. She said, just see how these kings, who are actually playthings in the hands of death, are desiring to conquer me. Text 2. Great rulers of men, even those who are learned, meet frustration and failure because of material lust. Driven by lust, these kings place great hope and faith in the dead lump of flesh called the body, even though the material frame is as fleeting as bubbles of foam on water. Texts 3-4. Kings and politicians imagine, first I will conquer my senses and mind, then I will subdue my chief ministers and rid myself of the thorn pricks of my advisors, citizens, friends and relatives, as well as the keepers of my elephants. In this way I will gradually conquer the entire earth. Because the hearts of these leaders are bound by great expectations, they fail to see death waiting nearby. Text 5. After conquering all the land on my surface, these proud kings forcibly enter the ocean to conquer the sea itself. What is the use of their self-control, which is aimed at political exploitation? The actual goal of self-control is spiritual liberation. Text 6. O best of the Kurus, the earth continued as follows, although in the past great men and their descendants have left me, departing from this world in the same helpless way they came into it, even today foolish men are trying to conquer me. Text 7. For the sake of conquering me, materialistic persons fight one another. Fathers oppose their sons, and brothers fight one another, because their hearts are bound to possessing political power. Text 8. Political leaders challenge one another, all this land is mine. It's not yours, you fool. Thus they attack one another and die. Texts 9-13. Such kings as Prithu, Purava, Gudi, Nausa, Berta, Kartavirya Arjuna, Mandhata, Sagara, Rama, Katvanga, Dindha, Raghu, Trinabandhu, Yayati, Saryati, Santanu, Gaya, Bhajaratha, Kuvalayasva, Kakutstha, Nasada, Nurga, Hiranyakasipu, Vritra, Ravana, who made the whole world lament, Namusi, Sambara, Bhama, Hiranyaksa, and Taraka, as well as many other demons and kings who possessed great powers of control over others, were all full of knowledge, heroic, all-conquering and unconquerable. Nevertheless, O Almighty Lord, although they lived their lives intensely trying to possess me, these kings were subject to the passage of time, which reduced them all to mere historical accounts. None of them could permanently establish their rule. Text 14. Sukadeva Goswami said, O mighty Pariksit, I have related to you the narrations of all these great kings, who spread their fame throughout the world and then departed. My real purpose was to teach transcendental knowledge and renunciation. Stories of kings lend power and opulence to these narrations but do not in themselves constitute the ultimate aspect of knowledge. Text 15. The person who desires pure devotional service to Lord Krishna should hear the narrations of Lord Uttamashloka's glorious qualities, the constant chanting of which destroys everything inauspicious. The devotee should engage in such listening in regular daily assemblies and should also continue his hearing throughout the day. Text 16, King Pariksit said, "My lord, how can persons living in the age of Kali rid themselves of the cumulative contamination of this age? O great sage, please explain this to me." Text 17, please explain the different ages of universal history, the special qualities of each age, the duration of cosmic maintenance and destruction, and the movement of time, which is the direct representation of the Supreme Soul, the personality of Godhead, Lord Vishnu. Text 18, Sukadeva Goswami said, "My dear king, in the beginning, during Satya Yuga, the age of truth, religion is present with all four of its legs intact and is carefully maintained by the people of that age. These four legs of powerful religion are truthfulness, mercy, austerity and charity." Text 19, the people of Satya Yuga are for the most part self-satisfied, merciful, friendly to all, peaceful, sober and tolerant. They take their pleasure from within, see all things equally and always endeavor diligently for spiritual perfection. Text 20, in Treta Yuga each leg of religion is gradually reduced by 1/4 by the influence of the four pillars of religion, lying, violence, dissatisfaction and quarrel. Text 21, in the Treta age people are devoted to ritual performances and severe austerities. They are not excessively violent or very lusty after sensual pleasure. Their interest lies primarily in religiosity, economic development and regulated sense gratification, and they achieve prosperity by following the prescriptions of the three Vedas. Although in this age society evolves into four separate classes, O king, most people are Brahmanas. Text 22, in Dvapara Yuga the religious qualities of austerity, truth, mercy and charity are reduced to 1/2 by their irreligious counterparts, dissatisfaction, untruth, violence and enmity. Text 23, in the Dvapara age people are interested in glory and are very noble. They devote themselves to the study of the Vedas, possess great opulence, support large families and enjoy life with vigor. Of the four classes, the Kshatriyas and Brahmanas are most numerous. Text 24, in the age of Kali only 1/4 of the religious principles remains. That last remnant will continuously be decreased by the ever-increasing principles of religion and will finally be destroyed. Text 25, in the Kali age people tend to be greedy, ill-behaved and merciless, and they fight one another without good reason. Unfortunate and obsessed with material desires, the people of Kali Yuga are almost all Sudras and barbarians. Text 26, the material modes, goodness, passion and ignorance, whose permutations are observed within a person's mind, are set into motion by the power of time. Text 27, when the mind, intelligence and senses are solidly fixed in the mode of goodness, that time should be understood as Satya Yuga, the age of truth. People then take pleasure in knowledge and austerity. Text 28, O most intelligent one, when the conditioned souls are devoted to their duties but have ulterior motives and seek personal prestige, you should understand such a situation to be the age of Treta, in which the functions of passion are prominent. Text 29, when greed, dissatisfaction, false pride, hypocrisy and envy become prominent, along with attraction for selfish activities, such a time is the age of Dvapara, dominated by the mixed modes of passion and ignorance. Text 30, when there is a predominance of cheating, lying, sloth, sleepiness, violence, depression, lamentation, bewilderment, fear and poverty, that age is Kali, the age of the mode of ignorance. Text 31, because of the bad qualities of the age of Kali, human beings will become short-sighted, unfortunate, gluttonous, lustful and poverty-stricken. The women, becoming unchaste, will freely wander from one man to the next. Text 32, cities will be dominated by thieves, the Vedas will be contaminated by speculative interpretations of atheists, political leaders will virtually consume the citizens, and the so-called priests and intellectuals will be devotees of their bellies and genitals. Text 33, the brahmacharis will fail to execute their vows and become generally unclean. The householders will become beggars, the vanaprasthas will live in the villages, and the sannyasis will become greedy for wealth. Text 34, women will become much smaller in size, and they will eat too much, have more children than they can properly take care of, and lose all shyness. They will always speak harshly and will exhibit qualities of thievery, deceit and unrestrained audacity. Text 35, businessmen will engage in petty commerce and earn their money by cheating. Even when there is no emergency, people will consider any degraded occupation quite acceptable. Text 36, servants will abandon a master who has lost his wealth, even if that master is a saintly person of exemplary character. Masters will abandon an incapacitated servant, even if that servant has been in the family for generations. Cows will be abandoned or killed when they stop giving milk. Text 37. In Kali Yuga men will be wretched and controlled by women. They will reject their fathers, brothers, other relatives and friends and will instead associate with the sisters and brothers of their wives. Thus their conception of friendship will be based exclusively on sexual ties. Text 38. Uncultured men will accept charity on behalf of the Lord and will earn their livelihood by making a show of austerity and wearing a mendicant's dress. Those who know nothing about religion will mount a high seat and presume to speak on religious principles. Text 39-40. In the age of Kali, people's minds will always be agitated. They will become emaciated by famine and taxation, my dear king, and will always be disturbed by fear of drought. They will lack adequate clothing, food and drink, will be unable to properly rest, have sex or bathe themselves, and will have no ornaments to decorate their bodies. In fact, the people of Kali Yuga will gradually come to appear like ghostly, haunted creatures. Text 41. In Kali Yuga men will develop hatred for each other even over a few coins. Giving up all friendly relations, they will be ready to lose their own lives and kill even their own relatives. Text 42. Men will no longer protect their elderly parents, their children or their respectable wives. Thoroughly degraded, they will care only to satisfy their own bellies and genitals. Text 43. O king, in the age of Kali people's intelligence will be diverted by atheism, and they will almost never offer sacrifice to the Supreme Personality of Godhead, who is the Supreme Spiritual Master of the universe. Although the great personalities who control the three worlds all bow down to the lotus feet of the Supreme Lord, the petty and miserable human beings of this age will not do so. Text 44. Terrified, about to die, a man collapses on his bed. Although his voice is faltering and he is hardly conscious of what he is saying, if he utters the holy name of the Supreme Lord he can be freed from the reaction of his fruitive work and achieve the supreme destination. But still people in the age of Kali will not worship the Supreme Lord. Text 45. In the Kali Yuga, objects, places and even individual personalities are all polluted. The Almighty Personality of Godhead, however, can remove all such contamination from the life of one who fixes the Lord within his mind. Text 46. If a person hears about, glorifies, meditates upon, worships or simply offers great respect to the Supreme Lord, who is situated within the heart, the Lord will remove from his mind the contamination accumulated during many thousands of lifetimes. Text 47. Just as fire applied to gold removes any discoloration caused by traces of other metals, Lord Vishnu within the heart purifies the minds of the yogis. Text 48. By one's engaging in the processes of demigod worship, austerities, breath control, compassion, bathing in holy places, strict vows, charity and chanting of various mantras, one's mind cannot attain the same absolute purification as that achieved when the unlimited personality of Godhead appears within one's heart. Text 49. Therefore, O king, endeavor with all your might to fix the Supreme Lord Kesava within your heart. Maintain this concentration upon the Lord, and at the time of death you will certainly attain the supreme destination. Text 50. My dear king, the personality of Godhead is the ultimate controller. He is the supreme soul and the supreme shelter of all beings. When meditated upon by those about to die, he reveals to them their own eternal spiritual identity. Text 51. My dear king, although Kali Yuga is an ocean of faults, there is still one good quality about this age. Simply by chanting the Hare Krishna Maha mantra, one can become free from material bondage and be promoted to the transcendental kingdom. Text 52. Whatever result was obtained in Satya Yuga by meditating on Vishnu, in Treta Yuga by performing sacrifices, and in Dvapara Yuga by serving the Lord's lotus feet can be obtained in Kali Yuga simply by chanting the Hare Krishna Maha mantra. Library Śrīmad Bhāgavatam, Bhagavata Purana, Canto 12, The Age of Deterioration Chapter 4 The Four Categories of Universal Annihilation. This chapter discusses the four kinds of annihilation: constant, occasional, material and final, and the chanting of the holy name of Lord Hari, which is the only means of stopping the cycle of material life. 1,000 cycles of 4 ages constitute one day of Brahma, and each day of Brahma, called a kalpa, contains within it the lifetimes of 14 minutes. The duration of Brahma's night is the same as that of his day. During his night Brahma sleeps, and the 3 planetary systems meet destruction. This is the naimatika, or occasional, annihilation. When Brahma's lifespan of 100 years is finished, there occurs the prakritika, or total material, annihilation. At that time the 7 elements of material nature, beginning with the Mahat, and the entire universal egg composed of them are destroyed. When a person achieves knowledge of the Absolute, he understands factual reality. He perceives the entire created universe as separate from the absolute and therefore unreal. That is called the Atyantika, or final, annihilation, liberation. At every moment time invisibly transforms the bodies of all created beings and all other manifestations of matter. This process of transformation causes the living entity to undergo the constant annihilation of birth and death. Those possessed of subtle vision state that all creatures, including Brahma himself, are always subject to generation and annihilation. Material life means subjugation to birth and death, or generation and annihilation. The only boat suitable for crossing the ocean of material existence, which is otherwise impossible to cross, is the boat of submissive hearing of the nectarian pastimes of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Text 1. Sukadeva Goswami said, "My dear king, I have already described to you the measurements of time, beginning from the smallest fraction measured by the movement of a single atom up to the total lifespan of Lord Brahma. I have also discussed the measurement of the different millennia of universal history. Now hear about the time of Brahma's day and the process of annihilation." Text 2. 1,000 cycles of 4 ages constitute a single day of Brahma, known as a kalpa. In that period, O king, 14 manas come and go. Text 3. After 1 day of Brahma, annihilation occurs during his night, which is of the same duration. At that time all the 3 planetary systems are subject to destruction. Text 4. This is called the naimatika, or occasional, annihilation, during which the original creator, Lord Narayana, lies down upon the bed of Anantasesa and absorbs the entire universe within himself while Lord Brahma sleeps. Text 5. When the 2 halves of the lifetime of Lord Brahma, the most elevated created being, are complete, the 7 basic elements of creation are annihilated. Text 6. O king, upon the annihilation of the material elements, the universal egg, comprising the elemental amalgamation of creation, is confronted with destruction. Text 7. As annihilation approaches, O king, there will be no rain upon the earth for 100 years. Drought will lead to famine, and the starving populace will literally consume one another. The inhabitants of the earth, bewildered by the force of time, will gradually be destroyed. Text 8. The sun in its annihilating form will drink up with its terrible rays all the water of the ocean, of living bodies and of the earth itself. But the devastating sun will not give any rain in return. Text 9. Next the great fire of annihilation will flare up from the mouth of Lord Sankarsana. Carried by the mighty force of the wind, this fire will burn throughout the universe, scorching the lifeless cosmic shell. Text 10. Burned from all sides, from above by the blazing sun and from below by the fire of Lord Sankarsana, the universal sphere will glow like a burning ball of cow dung. Text 11. A great and terrible wind of destruction will begin to blow for more than 100 years, and the sky, covered with dust, will turn gray. Text 12. After that, O king, groups of multicolored clouds will gather, roaring terribly with thunder, and will pour down floods of rain for 100 years. Text 13. At that time, the shell of the universe will fill up with water, forming a single cosmic ocean. Text 14. As the entire universe is flooded, the water will rob the earth of its unique quality of fragrance, and the element earth, deprived of its distinguishing quality, will be dissolved. Texts 15 to 19. The element fire then seizes the taste from the element water, which, deprived of its unique quality, taste, merges into fire. Air seizes the form inherent in fire, and then fire, deprived of form, merges into air. The element ether seizes the quality of air, namely touch, and that air enters into ether. Then, O king, false ego in ignorance seizes sound, the quality of ether, after which ether merges into false ego. False ego in the mode of passion takes hold of the senses, and false ego in the mode of goodness absorbs the demigods. Then the total Mahatattva seizes false ego along with its various functions, and that Mahat is seized by the 3 basic modes of nature, goodness, passion and ignorance. My dear King Pariksit, these modes are further overtaken by the original unmanifest form of nature, impelled by time. That unmanifest nature is not subject to the 6 kinds of transformation caused by the influence of time. Rather, it has no beginning and no end. It is the unmanifest, eternal and infallible cause of creation. Texts 20 to 21. In the unmanifest stage of material nature, called pradhana, there is no expression of words, no mind and no manifestation of the subtle elements beginning from the Mahat, nor are there the modes of goodness, passion and ignorance. There is no life air or intelligence, nor any senses or demigods. There is no definite arrangement of planetary systems, nor are there represent the different stages of consciousness, sleep, wakefulness and deep sleep. There is no ether, water, earth, air, fire or sun. The situation is just like that of complete sleep, or of voidness. Indeed, it is indescribable. Authorities in spiritual science explain, however, that since pradhana is the original substance, it is the actual basis of material creation. Text 22, this is the annihilation called prakritika, during which the energies belonging to the Supreme Person and his unmanifest material nature, disassembled by the force of time, are deprived of their potencies and merge together totally. Text 23, it is the Absolute Truth alone who manifests in the forms of intelligence, the senses and the objects of sense perception, and who is their ultimate basis. Whatever has a beginning and an end is insubstantial because of being an object perceived by limited senses and because of being non-different from its own cause. Text 24, a lamp, the eye that views by the light of that lamp, and the visible form that is viewed are all basically non-different from the element fire. In the same way, intelligence, the senses and sense perceptions have no existence separate from the Supreme Reality, although that Absolute Truth remains totally distinct from them. Text 25, the three states of intelligence are called waking consciousness, sleep and deep sleep. But, my dear king, the variegated experiences created for the pure living entity by these different states are nothing more than illusion. Text 26, just as clouds in the sky come into being and are then dispersed by the amalgamation and dissolution of their constituent elements, this material universe is created and destroyed within the Absolute Truth by the amalgamation and dissolution of its elemental, constituent parts. Text 27, my dear king, it is stated, in the Vedanta Sutta, that the ingredient cause that constitutes any manifested product in this universe can be perceived as a separate reality, just as the threads that make up a cloth can be perceived separately from their product. Text 28, anything experienced in terms of general cause and specific effect must be an illusion, because such causes and effects exist only relative to each other. Indeed, whatever has a beginning and an end is unreal. Text 29, although perceived, the transformation of even a single atom of material nature has no ultimate definition without reference to the Supreme Soul. To be accepted as factually existing, something must possess the same quality as pure spirit, eternal, unchanging existence. Text 30, there is no material duality in the Absolute Truth. The duality perceived by an ignorant person is like the difference between the sky contained in an empty pot and the sky outside the pot, or the difference between the reflection of the sun in water and the sun itself in the sky, or the difference between the vital air within one living body and that within another body. Text 31, according to their different purposes, men utilize gold in various ways, and gold is therefore perceived in various forms. In the same way, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, who is inaccessible to material senses, is described in various terms, both ordinary and Vedic, by different types of men. Text 32, although a cloud is a product of the sun and is also made visible by the sun, it nevertheless creates darkness for the viewing eye, which is another partial expansion of the sun. Similarly, material false ego, a particular product of the Absolute Truth made visible by the Absolute Truth, obstructs the individual soul, another partial expansion of the Absolute Truth, from realizing the Absolute Truth. Text 33, when the cloud originally produced from the sun is torn apart, the eye can see the actual form of the sun. Similarly, when the spirit soul destroys his material covering of false ego by inquiring into the transcendental science, he regains his original spiritual awareness. Text 34, my dear Pariksit, when the illusory false ego that binds the soul has been cut off with a sort of discriminating knowledge and one has developed realization of Lord Asayuta, the Supreme Soul, this is called the Atyantika, or ultimate, annihilation of material existence. Text 35, experts in the subtle workings of nature, O subduer of the enemy, have declared that there are continuous processes of creation and annihilation that all created beings, beginning with Brahma, constantly undergo. Text 36, all material entities undergo transformation and are constantly and swiftly eroded by the mighty currents of time. The various stages of existence that material things exhibit are the perpetual causes of their generation and annihilation. Text 37, these stages of existence created by beginningless and endless time, the impersonal representative of the Supreme Lord, are not visible, just as the infinitesimal momentary changes of position of the planets in the sky cannot be directly seen. Text 38, in this way the progress of time is described in terms of the four kinds of annihilation: continuous, occasional, elemental and final. Text 39, O best of the Kurus, I have related to you these narrations of the pastimes of Lord Narayana, the creator of this world and the ultimate reservoir of all existence, presenting them to you only in brief summary. Even Lord Brahma himself would be incapable of describing them entirely. Text 40, For a person who is suffering in the fire of countless miseries and who desires to cross the insurmountable ocean of material existence, there is no suitable boat except that of cultivating devotion to the transcendental taste for the narrations of the Supreme Personality of Godhead's pastimes. Text 41. Long ago this essential anthology of all the Puranas was spoken by the infallible Lord Naranarayana or Si to Narada, who then repeated it to Krishna Dvaipayana Vyasa. Text 42. My dear Maharaja Pariksit, that great personality Srila Vyasadeva taught me this same scripture, SRIMAD Bhagavatam, which is equal in stature to the four Vedas. Text 43. Ah, best of the Kurus, the same Suta Goswami who is sitting before us will speak this Bhagavatam to the sages assembled in the great sacrifice at name Saranya. This he will do when questioned by the members of the assembly, headed by Sanaka. Library SRIMAD Bhāgavatam, Bhagavata Purana, Canto 12, The Age of Deterioration Chapter 5 Sukadeva Goswami's final instructions to Maharaja Pariksit. This chapter explains how King Pariksit's fear of death from the snakebird Diksaka was averted by Sukadeva Goswami's brief instructions on the absolute truth. Having in the last chapter described the four processes of annihilation that act in this material world, Srila Sukadeva Goswami now reminds Pariksit Maharaja how he had previously, in the third canto, discussed the measurement of time and of the various millennia of universal history. During a single day of Lord Brahma, constituting 1,000 cycles of 4 ages, 14 different manas rule and die. Thus death is unavoidable for every embodied being, but the soul itself never dies, being entirely distinct from the material body. Sri Sukadeva Goswami then states that in Śrīmad Bhāgavatam he has repeatedly chanted the glories of the Supreme Soul, Lord Sri Hari, from whose satisfaction Brahma takes birth and from whose anger Rudra is born. The idea I will die is simply the mentality of animals, because the soul does not undergo the bodily phases of previous non-existence, birth, existence and death. When the body's subtle mental covering is destroyed by transcendental knowledge, the soul within the body again exhibits his original identity. Just as the temporal existence of a lamp comes about by the combination of oil, the vessel, the wick and the fire, the material body comes about by the amalgamation of the three modes of nature. The material body appears at birth and displays life for some time. Finally, the combination of material modes dissolves, and the body undergoes death, a phenomenon similar to the extinguishing of a lamp. Sukadeva addresses the king, saying, "You should fix yourself in meditation upon Lord Vasudeva, and thus the bite of the snake bird will not affect you." Text 1. Sukadeva Goswami said, "This Śrīmad Bhāgavatam has elaborately described in various narrations the Supreme Soul of all that be, the personality of Godhead, Hari, from whose satisfaction Brahma is born and from whose anger Rudra takes birth." Text 2. O king, give up the animalistic mentality of thinking, "I am going to die." Unlike the body, you have not taken birth. There was not a time in the past when you did not exist, and you are not about to be destroyed. Text 3. You will not take birth again in the form of your sons and grandsons, like a sprout taking birth from a seed and then generating a new seed. Rather, you are entirely distinct from the material body and its paraphernalia, in the same way that fire is distinct from its fuel. Text 4. In a dream one can see his own head being cut off and thus understand that his actual self is standing apart from the dream experience. Similarly, while awake one can see that his body is a product of the 5 material elements. Therefore it is to be understood that the actual self, the soul, is distinct from the body and observes and is unborn and immortal. Text 5. When a pot is broken, the portion of sky within the pot remains as the element sky, just as before. In the same way, when the gross and subtle bodies die, the living entity within resumes his spiritual identity. Text 6. The material bodies, qualities and activities of the spirit soul are created by the material mind. That mind is itself created by the illusory potency of the Supreme Lord, and thus the soul assumes material existence. Text 7. A lamp functions as such only by the combination of its fuel, vessel, wick and fire. Similarly, material life, based on the soul's identification with the body, is developed and destroyed by the workings of material goodness, passion and ignorance, which are the constituent elements of the body. Text 8. The soul within the body is self-luminous and is separate from the visible gross body and invisible subtle body. It remains as the fixed basis of changing bodily existence, just as the ethereal sky is the unchanging background of material transformation. Therefore the soul is endless and without material comparison. Text 9. My dear king, by constantly meditating upon the Supreme Lord, Vasudeva, and by applying clear and logical intelligence, you should carefully consider your true self and how it is situated within the material body. Text 10. The snakebird Diksaka, sent by the curse of the Brahmana, will not burn your true self. The agents of death will never burn such a master of the self as you, for you have already conquered all dangers on your path back to Godhead. Texts 11-12, you should consider, I am non-different from the Absolute Truth, the Supreme Abode, and that Absolute Truth, the Supreme Destination, is not different from me. Thus resigning yourself to the Supreme Soul, who is free from all material misidentifications, you will not even notice the snake-bird Taksaka when he approaches with his poison-filled fangs and bites your foot. Nor will you see your dying body or the material world around you, because you will have realized yourself to be separate from them. Text 13. Beloved King Pariksit, I have narrated to you the topics you originally inquired about, the pastimes of Lord Hari, the Supreme Soul of the Universe. Now, what more do you wish to hear? Library Śrīmad Bhāgavatam, Bhagavata Purana, Canto 12, The Age of Deterioration Chapter 6 Maharaja Pariksit passes away. This chapter describes Maharaja Pariksit's attainment of liberation, Maharaja Janamai's performance of sacrifice for killing all snakes, the origin of the Vedas, and Srila Vedavyasa's dividing of the Vedic literature. After hearing the words of Sri Sukadeva, Maharaja Pariksit stated that by having listened to the Bhagavatam, which is the compendium of the Puranas and which is full of the nectarian pastimes of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Lord Uddhava, Pariksit had attained the transcendental position of fearlessness and oneness with the Supreme. His ignorance had been dispelled, and by the mercy of Sri Sukadeva he had gained sight of the supremely auspicious personal form of God, namely the personality of Godhead, Sri Hari. As a result, he had cast aside all fear of death. Sri Pariksit Maharaja then begged Sukadeva Goswami to permit him to fix his heart upon the lotus feet of Lord Hari and give up his life. Granting this permission, Sri Sukadeva rose and departed. Subsequently Maharaja Pariksit, free of all doubts, sat down in yogic posture and merged himself in meditation upon the Supersoul. Then the snakebird Taksaka, arriving in the disguise of a Brahmana, bit him, and the body of the saintly king immediately burned to ashes. Janamaiah, the son of Pariksit, became very angry when he received news of his father's death, and he began a sacrificial performance for the purpose of destroying all the snakes. Even though Taksaka received protection from Indra, he nevertheless became attracted by the mantras and was about to fall into the fire. Seeing this, Brihaspati, the son of Angirrsi, came and advised Maharaja Janamaiah that Taksaka could not be killed because he had drunk the nectar of the demigods. Furthermore, Brihaspati said that all living entities must enjoy the fruits of their past activities. Therefore the king should give up this sacrifice. Janamaiah was thus convinced by the words of Brihaspati and stopped his sacrifice. Thereafter Suta Goswami, in response to questions from Sri Saunaka, described the divisions of the Vedas. From the heart of the topmost demigod, Brahma, came the subtle transcendental vibration, and from this subtle sound vibration arose the syllable Om, greatly potent and self-luminous. Using this Omkara, Lord Brahma created the original Vedas and taught them to his sons, Marasi and others, who were all saintly leaders of the Brahmana community. This body of Vedic knowledge was handed down through the disciplic succession of spiritual masters until the end of Dvapara Yuga, when Lord Vyasadeva divided it into 4 parts and instructed various schools of sages in these 4 samhitas. When the sage Yajnavalkya was rejected by his spiritual master, he had to give up all the Vedic mantras he had received from him. To obtain new mantras of the Yajurveda, Yajnavalkya worshipped the Supreme Lord in the form of the sun god. Sri Suryadeva subsequently fulfilled his prayer. Text 1, Suta Goswami said, after hearing all that was narrated to him by the self-realized and equipoised Sukadeva, the son of Vyasadeva, Maharaja Pariksit humbly approached his lotus feet. Bowing his head down upon the sage's feet, the king, who had lived his entire life under the protection of Lord Vishnu, folded his hands in supplication and spoke as follows. Text 2, Maharaja Pariksit said, I have now achieved the purpose of my life, because a great and merciful soul like you has shown such kindness to me. You have personally spoken to me this narration of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Hari, who is without beginning or end. Text 3, I do not consider it at all amazing that great souls such as yourself, whose minds are always absorbed in the infallible personality of Godhead, show mercy to the foolish conditioned souls, tormented as we are by the problems of material life. Text 4, I have heard from you the SRIMAD Bhāgavatam, which is the perfect summary of all the Puranas and which perfectly describes the Supreme Lord, Uttama Sloka. Text 5, My Lord, I now have no fear of Taksaka or any other living being, or even of repeated deaths, because I have absorbed myself in that purely spiritual absolute truth, which you have revealed and which destroys all fear. Text 6, O Brahmana, please give me permission to resign my speech and the functions of all my senses unto Lord Adhoksaja. Allow me to absorb my mind, purified of lusty desires, within him and to thus give up my life. Text 7. You have revealed to me that which is most auspicious, the supreme personal feature of the Lord. I am now fixed in knowledge and self-realization, and my ignorance has been eradicated. Text 8. Suta Goswami said, thus requested, the saintly son of Srila Vyasadeva gave his permission to King Pariksit. Then, after being worshipped by the king and all the sages present, Sukadeva departed from that place. Texts 9-10. Maharaja Pariksit then sat down on the bank of the Ganges, upon a seat made of darba grass with the tips of its stalks facing east, and turned himself toward the north. Having attained the perfection of yoga, he experienced full self-realization and was free of material attachment and doubt. The saintly king settled his mind within his spiritual self by pure intelligence and proceeded to meditate upon the supreme absolute truth. His life air ceased to move, and he became as stationary as a tree. Text 11. O learned Brahmanas, the snake-bird Taksaka, who had been sent by the angry son of a Brahmana, was going toward the king to kill him when he saw Kasyapa Muni on the path. Text 12. Taksaka flattered Kasyapa by presenting him with valuable offerings and thereby stopped the sage, who was expert in counteracting poison, from protecting Maharaja Pariksit. Then the snake-bird, who could assume any form he wished, disguised himself as a Brahmana, approached the king and bit him. Text 13. While living beings all over the universe looked on, the body of the great self-realized saint among kings was immediately burned to ashes by the fire of the snake's poison. Text 14. There arose a terrible cry of lamentation in all directions on the earth and in the heavens, and all the demigods, demons, human beings and other creatures were astonished. Text 15. Kettle drums sounded in the regions of the demigods, and the celestial Gandharvas and Asparas sang. The demigods showered flowers and spoke words of praise. Text 16. Hearing that his father had been fatally bitten by the snake-bird, Maharaja Janamehaya became extremely angry and had Brahmanas perform a mighty sacrifice in which he offered all the snakes in the world into the sacrificial fire. Text 17. When Taksaka saw even the most powerful serpents being burned in the blazing fire of that snake's sacrifice, he was overwhelmed with fear and approached Lord Indra for shelter. Text 18. When King Janamehaya did not see Taksaka entering his sacrificial fire, he said to the Brahmanas, why is not Taksaka, the lowest of all serpents, burning in this fire? Text 19. The Brahmanas replied, O best of kings, the snake Taksaka has not fallen into the fire because he is being protected by Indra, whom he has approached for shelter. Indra is holding him back from the fire. Text 20. The intelligent King Janamehaya, hearing these words, replied to the priests, then, my dear Brahmanas, why not make Taksaka fall into the fire, along with his protector, Indra? Text 21. Hearing this, the priests then chanted this mantra for offering Taksaka together with Indra as an oblation into the sacrificial fire, O Taksaka, fall immediately into this fire, together with Indra and his entire host of demigods. Text 22. When Lord Indra, along with his airplane and Taksaka, was suddenly thrown from his position by these insulting words of the Brahmanas, he became very disturbed. Text 23. Brahaspashi, the son of Angira Muni, seeing Indra falling from the sky in his airplane along with Taksaka, approached King Janamehaya and spoke to him as follows. Text 24. O king among men, it is not fitting that this king of snakes meet death at your hands, for he has drunk the nectar of the immortal demigods. Consequently he is not subject to the ordinary symptoms of old age and death. Text 25. The life and death of an embodied soul and his destination in the next life are all caused by himself through his own activity. Therefore, O king, no other agent is actually responsible for creating one's happiness and distress. Text 26. When a conditioned soul is killed by snakes, thieves, fire, lightning, hunger, disease or anything else, he is experiencing the reaction to his own past work. Text 27. Therefore, my dear king, please stop this sacrificial performance, which was initiated with the intent of doing harm to others. Many innocent snakes have already been burned to death. Indeed, all persons must suffer the unforeseen consequences of their past activities. Text 28. Suta Goswami continued, advised in this manner, Maharaja Janamehaya replied, so be it. Honoring the words of the great sage, he desisted from performing the snake sacrifice and worshipped Brahaspashi, the most eloquent of sages. Text 29. This is indeed the Supreme Lord Vishnu's illusory energy, which is unstoppable and difficult to perceive. Although the individual spirit souls are part and parcel of the Lord, through the influence of this illusory energy they are bewildered by their identification with various material bodies. Texts 30-31. But there exists a supreme reality, in which the illusory energy cannot fearlessly dominate, thinking, I can control this person because he is deceitful. In that highest reality there are no illusory argumentative philosophies. Rather, they're the true students of spiritual science constantly engage in authorized spiritual investigation. In that supreme reality there is no manifestation of the material mind, which functions in terms of alternating decision and doubt. Created material products, their subtle causes and the goals of enjoyment attained by their utilization do not exist there. Furthermore, in that supreme reality there is no conditioned spirit, covered by false ego and the three modes of nature. That reality excludes everything limited or limiting. One who is wise should therefore stop the waves of material life and enjoy within that supreme truth. Text 32. Those who desire to give up all that is not essentially real move systematically, by negative discrimination of the extraneous, to the supreme position of Lord Vishnu. Giving up petty materialism, they offer their love exclusively to the absolute truth within their hearts and embrace that highest truth in fixed meditation. Text 33. Such devotees come to understand the supreme transcendental situation of the personality of Godhead, Lord Vishnu, because they are no longer polluted by the concepts of I and my, which are based on body and home. Text 34. One should tolerate all insults and never fail to show proper respect to any person. Avoiding identification with the material body, one should not create enmity with anyone. Text 35. I offer my obeisances to the Supreme Personality of Godhead, the invincible Lord Sri Krishna. Simply by meditating upon his lotus feet I have been able to study and appreciate this great literature. Text 36. Saunaka Rsi said, O gentle Suta, please narrate to us how Pila and the other greatly intelligent disciples of Srila Vyasadeva, who are known as the standard authorities of Vedic wisdom, spoke and edited the Vedas. Text 37. Suta Goswami said, O Brahmana, first the subtle vibration of transcendental sound appeared from the sky of the heart of the most elevated Lord Brahma, whose mind was perfectly fixed in spiritual realization. One can perceive this subtle vibration when one stops all external hearing. Text 38. By worship of this subtle form of the Vedas, O Brahmana, mystic sages cleanse their hearts of all contamination caused by impurity of substance, activity and doer, and thus they attain freedom from repeated birth and death. Text 39. From that transcendental subtle vibration arose the Omkara composed of three sounds. The Omkara has unseen potencies and manifests automatically within a purified heart. It is the representation of the absolute truth in all three of his phases, the Supreme Personality, the Supreme Soul and the Supreme Impersonal Truth. Texts 40-41, this Omkara, ultimately non-material and imperceptible, is heard by the Supersoul without his possessing material ears or any other material senses. The entire expanse of Vedic sound is elaborated from Omkara, which appears from the soul, within the sky of the heart. It is the direct designation of the self-originating absolute truth, the Supersoul, and is the secret essence and eternal seed of all Vedic hymns. Text 42. Omkara exhibited the three original sounds of the alphabet, A, U and M. These three, O most eminent descendant of Bhrigu, sustain all the different threefold aspects of material existence, including the three modes of nature, the names of the Arji, Yajur, and Sama Vedas, the goals known as the Bor, Bhuvar and Svar planetary systems, and the three functional platforms called waking consciousness, sleep and deep sleep. Text 43. From that Omkara Lord Brahma created all the sounds of the alphabet, the vowels, consonants, semivowels, sibilants and others, distinguished by such features as long and short measure. Text 44. All-powerful Brahma made use of this collection of sounds to produce from his four faces the four Vedas, which appeared together with the sacred Omkara and the seven Vyarti invocations. His intention was to propagate the process of Vedic sacrifice according to the different functions performed by the priests of each of the four Vedas. Text 45. Brahma taught these Vedas to his sons, who were great sages among the Brahmanas and experts in the art of Vedic recitation. They in turn took the role of Acharyas and imparted the Vedas to their own sons. Text 46. In this way, throughout the cycles of 4 ages, generation after generation of disciples, all firmly fixed in their spiritual vows, have received these Vedas by disciplic succession. At the end of each Dvapara Yuga the Vedas are edited into separate divisions by eminent sages. Text 47. Observing that people in general were diminished in their lifespan, strength and intelligence by the influence of time, great sages took inspiration from the personality of Godhead sitting within their hearts and systematically divided the Vedas. Texts 48-49, O Brahmana, in the present age of Vaivasvata Manu, the leaders of the universe, led by Brahma and Shiva, requested the Supreme Personality of Godhead, the protector of all the worlds, to save the principles of religion. O most fortunate Saunaka, the Almighty Lord, exhibiting a divine spark of a portion of his plenary portion, then appeared in the womb of such a body as the son of Parasara. In this form, named Krishna Dvipayana Vyasa, he divided the one Veda into four. Text 50, Srila Vyasadeva separated the mantras of the Arji, Atharva, Yajur and Samavedas into four divisions, just as one sorts out a mixed collection of jewels into piles. Thus he composed four distinct Vedic literatures. Text 51, the most powerful and intelligent Vyasadeva called four of his disciples, O Brahmana, and entrusted to each of them one of these four Samhitas. Texts 52-53, Srila Vyasadeva taught the first Samhita, the Arji Veda, to Pila and gave this collection the name Bahurka. To the sage Vasampayana he spoke the collection of Yajur mantras named Nigata. He taught the Samaveda mantras, designated as the Chandoga Samhita, to Jaimini, and he spoke the Atharva Veda to his dear disciple Sumantu. Texts 54-56, after dividing his Samhita into two parts, the wise Pila spoke it to Indrapramiti and Baskala. Baskala further divided his collection into four parts, Abhargava, and instructed them to his disciples Bodhya, Yajnavalkya, Parasara, and Agnimitra. Indrapramiti, the self-controlled sage, taught his Samhita to the learned mystic Mandukya, whose disciple Devamitra later passed down the divisions of the Arji Veda to Saubhari and others. Text 57, the son of Mandukya, named Sakhya, divided his own collection into five, entrusting one subdivision each to Vatsya, Mudgala, Saliya, Gokalya, and Sisira. Text 58, the sage Jatukarna was also a disciple of Sakhya, and after dividing the Samhita he received from Sakhya into three parts, he added a fourth section, a Vedic glossary. He taught one of these parts to each of four disciples, Balaka, the second Pila, Jubala, and Viraja. Text 59, Baskali assembled the Valakalya Samhita, a collection from all the branches of the Arji Veda. This collection was received by Valayani, Bhujya, and Kesara. Text 60, thus these various Samhitas of the Arji Veda were maintained through disciplic succession by these saintly Brahmanas. Simply by hearing of this distribution of the Vedic hymns, one will be freed from all sins. Text 61, the disciples of Vasampayana became authorities in the Atharva Veda. They were known as the Karikas because they executed strict vows to free their guru from his sin of killing a Brahmana. Text 62, once Yajnavalkya, one of the disciples of Vasampayana, said, O Master, how much benefit will be derived from the feeble endeavors of these weak disciples of yours? I will personally perform some outstanding penance. Text 63, addressed thus, the spiritual master Vasampayana became angry and said, Go away from here. Enough of you, O disciple who insults Brahmanas. Furthermore, you must immediately give back everything I have taught you. Text 64-65, Yajnavalkya, the son of Devarata, then vomited the mantras of the Yajur Veda and went away from there. The assembled disciples, looking greedily upon these Yajur hymns, assumed the form of partridges and picked them up. These divisions of the Yajur Veda therefore became known as the most beautiful Taittiriya Samhita, the hymns collected by partridges, Titira. Text 66, my dear Brahmana Sanaka, Yajnavalkya then desired to find out new Yajur mantras unknown to even his spiritual master. With this in mind he offered attentive worship to the powerful Lord of the Sun. Text 67, Sri Yajnavalkya said, I offer my respectful obeisances to the Supreme Personality of Godhead appearing as the Sun. You are present as the controller of the four kinds of living entities, beginning from Brahma and extending down to the blades of grass. Just as the sky is present both inside and outside every living being, you exist both within the hearts of all as the supersoul and externally in the form of time. Just as the sky cannot be covered by the clouds present within it, you are never covered by any false material designation. By the flow of years, which are made up of the tiny fragments of time called kshanas, lavas and nimasas, you alone maintain this world, drying up the waters and giving them back as rain. Text 68, O glowing one, O powerful Lord of the Sun, you are the chief of all the demigods. I meditate with careful attention on your fiery globe, because for those who offer prayers to you 3 times daily according to the Vedic method passed down through authorized disciplic succession, you burn away all sinful activities, all consequent suffering and even the original seed of desire. Text 69, you are personally present as the indwelling Lord in the hearts of all moving and non-moving beings, who depend completely on your shelter. Indeed, you animate their material minds, senses and vital airs to act. Text 70, the world has been seized and swallowed by the python of darkness in its horrible mouth and has become unconscious, as if dead. But mercifully glancing upon the sleeping people of the world, you raise them up with the gift of sight. Thus you are most magnanimous. At the 3 sacred junctures of each day, you engage the pious in the path of ultimate good, inducing them to perform religious duties that situate them in their spiritual position. Text 71. Just like an earthly king, you travel about everywhere spreading fear among the unholy as the powerful deities of the directions offer you in their folded palms lotus flowers and other respectful presentations. Text 72. Therefore, my Lord, I am prayerfully approaching your lotus feet, which are honored by the spiritual masters of the three worlds, because I hope to receive from you mantras of the Yajurveda unknown to anyone else. Text 73. Suta Goswami said, satisfied by such glorification, the powerful sun god assumed the form of a horse and presented to the sage Yajnavalkya Yajur mantras previously unknown in human society. Text 74. From these countless hundreds of mantras of the Yajurveda, the powerful sage compiled 15 new branches of Vedic literature. These became known as the Vajrasanyi Samhita because they were produced from the hairs of the horse's mane, and they were accepted in disciplic succession by the followers of Kanva, Madhyandina and other rishis. Text 75. Jaimini Rsi, the authority of the Samaveda, had a son named Sumantu, and the son of Sumantu was Sutvan. The sage Jaimini spoke to each of them a different part of the Samaveda Samhita. Text 76-77. Sakarma, another disciple of Jaimini, was a great scholar. He divided the mighty tree of the Samaveda into 1,000 Samhitas. Then, O Brahmana, 3 disciples of Sakarma, Hiranyanabha, the son of Kusala, Pasyanji, and Avantya, who was very advanced in spiritual realization, took charge of the Sama mantras. Text 78. The 500 disciples of Pasyanji and Avantya became known as the northern singers of the Samaveda, and in later times some of them also became known as eastern singers. Text 79. 5 other disciples of Pasyanji, namely Lakaksi, Mangali, Kulya, Kusida, and Kuksi, each received 100 Samhitas. Text 80. Krita, the disciple of Hiranyanabha, spoke 24 Samhitas to his own disciples, and the remaining collections were passed down by the self-realized sage Avantya. Library Śrīmad Bhāgavatam, Bhagavata Purana, Canto 12, The Age of Deterioration Chapter 7. The Puranic literatures. In this chapter Sri Suta Goswami describes the expansion of the branches of the Atharva Veda, enumerates the compilers of the Puranas and explains the characteristics of a Purana. He then lists the 18 major Puranas and finishes his account by stating that any person who hears about these matters from someone in a proper disciplic succession will acquire spiritual potency. Text 1. Suta Goswami said, Sumantu Rsi, the authority on the Atharva Veda, taught his Samhita to his disciple Kabanda, who in turn spoke it to Pathya and Vedadarsa. Text 2. Saklayani, Brahmabali, Madhosa and Pipalayani were disciples of Vedadarsa. Hear from me also the names of the disciples of Pathya. My dear Brahmana, they are Kamuda, Sunaka, and Jajali, all of whom knew the Atharva Veda very well. Text 3. Babru and Saint Havayana, disciples of Sunaka, studied the 2 divisions of their spiritual master's compilation of the Atharva Veda. Saint Havayana's disciple Savarna and disciples of other great sages also studied this edition of the Atharva Veda. Text 4. Naksatrakalpa, Sandakalpa, Kasyapa, and Jairasa and others were also among the Acharyas of the Atharva Veda. Now, O sage, listen as I name the authorities on Puranic literature. Text 5. Triarani, Kasyapa, Savarni, Akritavrana, Vasampayana and Harita are the 6 masters of the Puranas. Text 6. Each of them studied one of the 6 anthologies of the Puranas from my father, Ramaharsana, who was a disciple of Srila Vyasadeva. I became the disciple of these 6 authorities and thoroughly learned all their presentations of Puranic wisdom. Text 7. Ramaharsana, a disciple of Vedavyasa, divided the Puranas into 4 basic compilations. The sage Kasyapa and I, along with Savarni and Akritavrana, a disciple of Rama, learned these 4 divisions. Text 8. O Sanaka, please hear with attention the characteristics of a Purana, which have been defined by the most eminent learned Brahmanas in accordance with Vedic literature. Texts 9-10. O Brahmana, authorities on the matter understand a Purana to contain 10 characteristic topics: the creation of this universe, the subsequent creation of worlds and beings, the maintenance of all living beings, their sustenance, the rule of various manas, the dynasties of great kings, the activities of such kings, annihilation, motivation and the supreme shelter. Other scholars state that the great Puranas deal with these 10 topics, while lesser Puranas may deal with 5. Text 11. From the agitation of the original modes within the unmanifest material nature, the Mahatattva arises. From the Mahatattva comes the element false ego, which divides into 3 aspects. This threefold false ego further manifests as the subtle forms of perception, as the senses and as the gross sense objects. The generation of all these is called creation. Text 12. The secondary creation, which exists by the mercy of the Lord, is the manifest amalgamation of the desires of the living entities. Just as a seed produces additional seeds, activities that promote material desires in the performer produce moving and non-moving life forms. Text 13. Vritti means the process of sustenance, by which the moving beings live upon the non-moving. For a human, vritti specifically means acting for one's livelihood in a manner suited to his personal nature. Such action may be carried out either in pursuit of selfish desire or in accordance with the law of God. Text 14. In each age, the infallible Lord appears in this world among the animals, human beings, sages and demigods. By his activities in these incarnations he protects the universe and kills the enemies of Vedic culture. Text 15. In each reign of Manu, 6 types of personalities appear as manifestations of Lord Hari, the ruling Manu, the chief demigods, the sons of Manu, Indra, the great sages and the partial incarnations of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Text 16. Dynasties are lines of kings originating with Lord Brahma and extending continuously through past, present and future. The accounts of such dynasties, especially of their most prominent members, constitute the subject of dynastic history. Text 17. There are 4 types of cosmic annihilation: occasional, elemental, continuous and ultimate, all of which are affected by the inherent potency of the Supreme Lord. Learned scholars have designated this topic dissolution. Text 18. Out of ignorance the living being performs material activities and thereby becomes in one sense the cause of the creation, maintenance and destruction of the universe. Some authorities call the living being the personality underlying the material creation, while others say he is the unmanifest self. Text 19. The Supreme Absolute Truth is present throughout all the stages of awareness, waking consciousness, sleep and deep sleep, throughout all the phenomena manifested by the illusory energy, and within the functions of all living entities, and he also exists separate from all these. Thus situated in his own transcendence, he is the ultimate and unique shelter. Text 20. Although a material object may assume various forms and names, its essential ingredient is always present as the basis of its existence. Similarly, both conjointly and separately, the Supreme Absolute Truth is always present with the created material body throughout its phases of existence, beginning with conception and ending with death. Text 21. Either automatically or because of one's regulated spiritual practice, one's mind may stop functioning on the material platform of waking consciousness, sleep and deep sleep. Then one understands the Supreme Soul and withdraws from material endeavor. Text 22. Sages expert in ancient histories have declared that the Puranas, according to their various characteristics, can be divided into 18 major Puranas and 18 secondary Puranas. Texts 23 to 24. The 18 major Puranas are the Brahma, Padma, Vishnu, Shiva, Linga, Garuda, Narada, Bhagavata, Agni, Skanda, Bhavashya, Brahmavaivarta, Markandeya, Vamana, Varaha, Matsya, Kurma, and Brahmanda Puranas. Text 25. I have thoroughly described to you, O Brahmana, the expansion of the branches of the Vedas by the great sage Vyasadeva, his disciples and the disciples of his disciples. One who listens to this narration will increase in spiritual strength. Library Śrīmad Bhāgavatam, Bhagavata Purana, Canto 12, The Age of Deterioration Chapter 8 Markandeya's Prayers to Naranarayana RSI. This chapter describes how Markandeya RSI performed austerities, defeated by his potency Cupid and all his associates, and offered prayers to Lord Sri Hari in his forms of Nara and Narayana. Sri Sanaka was confused about the extraordinarily long lifespan of Sri Markandeya, who had taken birth in Sanaka's own dynasty yet who had moved about alone in the ocean of devastation millions of years previously and seen a wonderful young child lying upon a banyan leaf. It seemed to Sanaka that Markandeya had lived through 2 days of Brahma, and he asked Sri Suta Goswami to explain this. Suta Goswami replied that the sage Markandeya, after receiving the purificatory ritual of Brahminical initiation from his father, had fixed himself in the vow of lifelong celibacy. He then worshipped the Supreme Lord Hari for 6 lifetimes of Manu. In the 7th Manvantara, Lord Indra sent Kamadeva, Cupid, and his associates to interrupt the sage's austerities. But Markandeya RSI defeated them by the potency generated from his penance. Then, to show mercy to Markandeya, Lord Sri Hari appeared before him in the form of Naranarayana. Sri Markandeya prostrated himself in obeisance and then worshipped the lords by offering them comfortable seats, water for washing their feet, and other respectful presentations. He then prayed, O Almighty Lord, you bring to life the vital air of all creatures, and you also protect the 3 worlds, vanquish distress and award liberation. You never allow those who have taken shelter of you to be defeated by any kind of misery. Attaining your lotus feet is the only auspicious goal for the conditioned souls, and service to you fulfills all their desires. Your pastimes, enacted in the mode of pure goodness, can award everyone's salvation from material life. Therefore those who are intelligent worship your personal form of pure goodness named Sri Narayana, along with Nara, who represents your unalloyed devotee. The living entity bewildered by illusion can directly understand you if he receives the knowledge presented in the Vedas and promulgated by you, the spiritual master of the entire universe. Even great thinkers like Brahma are simply bewildered when they try to understand your identity by struggling on the path of Sankhya Yoga. You yourself manifest the proponents of Sankhya and other philosophies, and thus your true personal identity remains hidden beneath the designative covering of the Yuga soul. I offer my homage to you, the Mahapurusa. Text 1. Sri Sanaka said, O Suta, may you live a long life. O saintly one, best of speakers, please continue speaking to us. Indeed, only you can show men the path out of the ignorance in which they are wandering. Texts 2-5. Authorities say that Markandeya Rsi, the son of Markandu, was an exceptionally long-lived sage who was the only survivor at the end of Brahma's day, when the entire universe was merged in the flood of annihilation. But this same Markandeya Rsi, the foremost descendant of Bhrigu, took birth in my own family during the current day of Brahma, and we have not yet seen any total annihilation in this day of Brahma. Also, it is well known that Markandeya, while wandering helplessly in the great ocean of annihilation, saw in those fearful waters a wonderful personality, an infant boy lying alone within the fold of a banyan leaf. O Suta, I am most bewildered and curious about this great sage, Markandeya Rsi. O great yogi, you are universally accepted as the authority on all the Puranas. Therefore kindly dispel my confusion. Text 6, Suta Goswami said, O great sage Sanaka, your very question will help remove everyone's illusion, for it leads to the topics of Lord Narayana, which cleanse away the contamination of this Kali age. Text 7-11, after being purified by his father's performance of the prescribed rituals leading to Markandeya's Brahminical initiation, Markandeya studied the Vedic hymns and strictly observed the regulative principles. He became advanced in austerity and Vedic knowledge and remained a lifelong celibate. Appearing most peaceful with his matted hair and his clothing made of bark, he furthered his spiritual progress by carrying the mendicant's water pot, staff, sacred thread, brahmachari belt, black deerskin, lotus seed prayer beads and bundles of kusa grass. At the sacred junctures of the day he regularly worshipped the Supreme Personality of Godhead in 5 forms, the sacrificial fire, the sun, his spiritual master, the Brahmanas and the supersoul within his heart. Morning and evening he would go out begging, and upon returning he would present all the food he had collected to his spiritual master. Only when his spiritual master invited him would he silently take his one meal of the day, otherwise he would fast. Thus devoted to austerity and Vedic study, Markandeya Rsi worshipped the Supreme Master of the senses, the Personality of Godhead, for countless millions of years, and in this way he conquered unconquerable death. Text 12, Lord Brahma, Bhrigu Muni, Lord Shiva, Prajapati Daksa, the great sons of Brahma, and many others among the human beings, demigods, forefathers and ghostly spirits, all were astonished by the achievement of Markandeya Rsi. Text 13. In this way the devotional mystic Markandeya maintained rigid celibacy through penance, study of the Vedas and self-discipline. With his mind thus free of all disturbances, he turned it inward and meditated on the Supreme Personality of Godhead, who lies beyond the material senses. Text 14. While the mystic sage thus concentrated his mind by powerful yoga practice, the tremendous period of 6 lifetimes of Manu passed by. Text 15. O Brahmana, during the 7th reign of Manu, the current age, Lord Indra came to know of Markandeya's austerities and became fearful of his growing mystic potency. Thus he tried to impede the sage's penance. Text 16. To ruin the sage's spiritual practice, Lord Indra sent Cupid, beautiful celestial singers, dancing girls, the season of spring and the sandalwood-scented breeze from the Malaya hills, along with greed and intoxication personified. Text 17. O most powerful Sanaka, they went to Markandeya's hermitage, on the northern side of the Himalaya mountains where the Puspabhadra river passes by the famous peak Siddhara. Texts 18-20. Groves of pious trees decorated the holy asrama of Markandeya Rsi, and many saintly Brahmanas lived there, enjoying the abundant pure, sacred bonds. The asrama resounded with the buzzing of intoxicated bees and the cooing of excited cuckoos, while jubilant peacocks danced about. Indeed, many families of maddened birds crowded that hermitage. The springtime breeze sent by Lord Indra entered there, carrying cooling drops of spray from nearby waterfalls. fragrant from the embrace of forest flowers. That breeze entered the hermitage and began evoking the lusty spirit of Cupid. Text 21, springtime then appeared in Markandeya's asrama. Indeed, the evening sky, glowing with the light of the rising moon, became the very face of spring, and sprouts and fresh blossoms virtually covered the multitude of trees and creepers. Text 22, Cupid, the master of many heavenly women, then came there holding his bow and arrows. He was followed by groups of Gandharvas playing musical instruments and singing. Text 23, these servants of Indra found the sage sitting in meditation, having just offered his prescribed oblations into the sacrificial fire. His eyes closed in trance, he seemed invincible, like fire personified. Text 24, the women danced before the sage, and the celestial singers sang to the charming accompaniment of drums, cymbals and venas. Text 25, while the son of passion, greed personified, Spring and the other servants of Indra all tried to agitate Markandeya's mind, Cupid drew his five-headed arrow and fixed it upon his bow. Texts 26-27, the Apsara Punjiksthalai made a show of playing with a number of toy balls. Her waist seemed weighed down by her heavy breasts, and the wreath of flowers in her hair became disheveled. As she ran about after the balls, glancing here and there, the belt of her thin garment loosened, and suddenly the wind blew her clothes away. Text 28, Cupid, thinking he had conquered the sage, then shot his arrow. But all these attempts to seduce Markandeya proved futile, just like the useless endeavors of an atheist. Text 29, O learned Sanaka, while Cupid and his followers tried to harm the sage, they felt themselves being burned alive by his potency. Thus they stopped their mischief, just like children who have aroused a sleeping snake. Text 30, O Brahmana, the followers of Lord Indra had impudently attacked the saintly Markandeya, yet he did not succumb to any influence of false ego. For great souls such tolerance is not at all surprising. Text 31, the mighty King Indra was most astonished when he heard of the mystic prowess of the exalted sage Markandeya and saw how Cupid and his associates had become powerless in his presence. Text 32, desiring to bestow his mercy upon the saintly Markandeya, who had perfectly fixed his mind in self-realization through penance, Vedic study and observance of regulative principles, the Supreme Personality of Godhead personally appeared before the sage in the forms of Nara and Narayana. Texts 33-34, one of them was of a whitish complexion, the other blackish, and they both had 4 arms. Their eyes resembled the petals of blooming lotuses, and they wore garments of black deerskin and bark, along with the 3-stranded sacred thread. In their hands, which were most purifying, they carried the mendicant's water pot, straight bamboo staff and lotus seed prayer beads, as well as the all-purifying Vedas in the symbolic form of bundles of darba grass. Their bearing was tall and their yellow effulgence the color of radiant lightning. Appearing as austerity personified, they were being worshipped by the foremost demigods. Text 35, these 2 sages, Nara and Narayana, were the direct personal forms of the Supreme Lord. When Markandeya Rsi saw them, he immediately stood up and then with great respect offered them obeisances by falling down flat on the ground like a stick. Text 36, the ecstasy of seeing them completely satisfied Markandeya's body, mind and senses and caused the hairs on his body to stand on end and his eyes to fill with tears. Overwhelmed, Markandeya found it difficult to look at them. Text 37, standing with his hands folded in supplication and his head bowed in humility, Markandeya felt such eagerness that he imagined he was embracing the 2 lords. In a voice choked with ecstasy, he repeatedly said, I offer you my humble obeisances. Text 38, he gave them sitting places and washed their feet, and then he worshipped them with presentations of urghya, sandalwood pulp, fragrant oils, incense and flower garlands. Text 39, Markandeya Rsi once again bowed down at the lotus feet of those 2 most worshipable sages, who were sitting at ease, ready to bestow all mercy upon him. He then addressed them as follows. Text 40, Sri Markandeya said, O Almighty Lord, how can I possibly describe you? You awaken the vital air, which then impels the mind, senses and power of speech to act. This is true for all ordinary conditioned souls and even for great demigods like Brahma and Shiva. So it is certainly true for me. Nevertheless, you become the intimate friend of those who worship you. Text 41, O Supreme Personality of Godhead, these 2 personal forms of yours have appeared to bestow the ultimate benefit for the 3 worlds, the cessation of material misery and the conquest of death. My Lord, although you create this universe and then assume many transcendental forms to protect it, you also swallow it up, just like a spider who spins and later withdraws its web. Text 42, because you are the protector and the supreme controller of all moving and non-moving beings, anyone who takes shelter of your lotus feet can never be touched by the contamination of material work, material qualities or time. Great sages who have assimilated the essential meaning of the Vedas offer their prayers to you. To gain your association, they bow down to you at every opportunity and constantly worship you and meditate upon you. Text 43, My dear Lord, even Lord Brahma, who enjoys his exalted position for the entire duration of the universe, fears the passage of time. Then what to speak of those whom Brahma creates, the conditioned souls? They encounter fearful dangers at every step of their lives. I do not know of any relief from this fear except shelter at your lotus feet, which are the very form of liberation. Text 44, Therefore I worship your lotus feet, having renounced my identification with the material body and everything else that covers my true self. These useless, insubstantial and temporary coverings are merely presumed to be separate from you, whose intelligence encompasses all truth. By attaining you, the Supreme Godhead and the Master of the soul, one attains everything desirable. Text 45, O my Lord, O Supreme Friend of the conditioned soul, although for the creation, maintenance and annihilation of this world you accept the modes of goodness, passion and ignorance, which constitute your illusory potency, you specifically employ the mode of goodness to liberate the conditioned souls. The other two modes simply bring them suffering, illusion and fear. Text 46, O Lord, because fearlessness, spiritual happiness and the kingdom of God are all achieved through the mode of pure goodness, your devotees consider this mode, but never passion and ignorance, to be a direct manifestation of you, the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Intelligent persons thus worship your beloved transcendental form, composed of pure goodness, along with the spiritual forms of your pure devotees. Text 47, I offer my humble obeisances to him, the Supreme Personality of Godhead. He is the all-pervading and all-inclusive form of the universe, as well as its spiritual master. I bow down to Lord Narayana, the supremely worshipable deity appearing as a sage, and also to the saintly Nara, the best of human beings, who is fixed in perfect goodness, fully in control of his speech, and the propagator of the Vedic literatures. Text 48, a materialist, his intelligence perverted by the action of his deceptive senses, cannot recognize you at all, although you are always present within his own senses and heart and also among the objects of his perception. Yet even though one's understanding has been covered by your illusory potency, if one obtains Vedic knowledge from you, the supreme spiritual master of all, he can directly understand you. Text 49, My dear Lord, the Vedic literatures alone reveal confidential knowledge of your supreme personality, and thus even such great scholars as Lord Brahma himself are bewildered in their attempt to understand you through empirical methods. Each philosopher understands you according to his particular speculative conclusions. I worship that supreme person, knowledge of whom is hidden by the bodily designations covering the conditioned soul's spiritual identity. Library Śrīmad Bhāgavatam, Bhagavata Purana, Canto 12, The Age of Deterioration Chapter 9 Markandeya RSI sees the illusory potency of the Lord. This chapter describes Markandeya RSI's vision of the Supreme Personality of Godhead's illusory energy. Satisfied by the prayers Sri Markandeya had offered, the Supreme Lord told him to ask for a benediction, and the sage said he wanted to see the Lord's illusory energy. The Supreme Lord Sri Hari, present before Markandeya in the form of Narayana, replied, So be it, and then left for Badarikasrama. One day, as Sri Markandeya was offering his evening prayers, the water of devastation suddenly flooded the three worlds. With great difficulty Markandeya moved about all alone in this water for a long time, until he came upon a banyan tree. Lying upon a leaf of that tree was an infant boy glowing with a charming effulgence. As Markandeya moved toward the leaf, he was pulled by the boy's inhalation and, just like a mosquito, drawn within his body. Inside the boy's body, Markandeya was amazed to see the entire universe just as it had been before the annihilation. After a moment the sage was carried out by the force of the child's exhalation and hurled back into the ocean of annihilation. Then, seeing that the child on the leaf was actually Sri Hari, the transcendental Lord situated within his own heart, Sri Markandeya tried to embrace him. But at that moment Lord Hari, the master of all mystic power, disappeared. Then the waters of annihilation disappeared as well, and Sri Markandeya found himself in his own asrama, just as before. Text 1, Suta Goswami said, The Supreme Lord Narayana, the friend of Nara, was satisfied by the proper glorification offered by the intelligent sage Markandeya. Thus the Lord addressed that excellent descendant of Bhrigu. Text 2, The Supreme Personality of Godhead said, My dear Markandeya, you are indeed the best of all learned brahmanas. You have perfected your life by practicing fixed meditation upon the Supreme Soul, as well as by focusing upon me your undeviating devotional service, your austerities, your study of the Vedas and your strict adherence to regulative principles. Text 3, We are perfectly satisfied with your practice of lifelong celibacy. Please choose whatever benediction you desire, since I can grant your wish. May you enjoy all good fortune. Text 4. The sage said, O Lord of Lords, all glories to you. O Lord Asayuta, you remove all distress for the devotees who surrender unto you. That you have allowed me to see you is all the benediction I want. Text 5. Such demigods as Lord Brahma achieved their exalted position simply by seeing your beautiful lotus feet after their minds had become mature in yoga practice. And now, my Lord, you have personally appeared before me. Text 6. O lotus-eyed Lord, O crest jewel of renowned personalities, although I am satisfied simply by seeing you, I do wish to see your illusory potency, by whose influence the entire world, together with its ruling demigods, considers reality to be materially variegated. Text 7. Suta Goswami said, O wise Sanaka, thus satisfied by Markandeya's praise and worship, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, smiling, replied, So be it, and then departed for his hermitage at Badarikasrama. Texts 8-9, thinking always of his desire to see the Lord's illusory energy, the sage remained in his asrama, meditating constantly upon the Lord within fire, the sun, the moon, water, the earth, air, lightning and his own heart, and worshipping him with paraphernalia conceived in his mind. But sometimes, overwhelmed by waves of love for the Lord, Markandeya would forget to perform his regular worship. Text 10. O Brahmana Sanaka, best of the Bhrigus. One day while Markandeya was performing his evening worship on the bank of the Puspabhadra, a great wind suddenly arose. Text 11. That wind created a terrible sound and brought in its wake fearsome clouds that were accompanied by lightning and roaring thunder, and that poured down on all sides torrents of rain as heavy as wagon wheels. Text 12. Then the four great oceans appeared on all sides, swallowing up the surface of the earth with their wind-tossed waves. In these oceans were terrible sea monsters, fearful whirlpools and ominous rumblings. Text 13. The sage saw the inhabitants of the universe, including himself, tormented within and without by the harsh winds, the bolts of lightning, and the great waves rising beyond the sky. As the whole earth flooded, he grew perplexed and fearful. Text 14. Even as Markandeya looked on, the rain pouring down from the clouds filled the ocean more and more until that great sea, its waters violently whipped into terrifying waves by hurricanes, covered up all the earth's islands, mountains and continents. Text 15. The water inundated the earth, outer space, heaven and the celestial region. Indeed, the entire expanse of the universe was flooded in all directions, and out of all its inhabitants only Markandeya remained. His matted hair scattered, the great sage wandered about alone in the water as if dumb and blind. Text 16. Tormented by hunger and thirst, attacked by monstrous makars and timingila fish and battered by the wind and waves, he moved aimlessly through the infinite darkness into which he had fallen. As he grew increasingly exhausted, he lost all sense of direction and could not tell the sky from the earth. Texts 17-18. At times he was engulfed by the great whirlpools, sometimes he was beaten by the mighty waves, and at other times the aquatic monsters threatened to devour him as they attacked one another. Sometimes he felt lamentation, bewilderment, misery, happiness or fear, and at other times he experienced such terrible illness and pain that he felt himself dying. Text 19. Countless millions of years passed as Markandeya wandered about in the deluge, his mind bewildered by the illusory energy of Lord Vishnu, the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Text 20. Once, while wandering in the water, the Brahmana Markandeya discovered a small island, upon which stood a young banyan tree bearing blossoms and fruits. Text 21. Upon a branch of the northeast portion of that tree he saw an infant boy lying within a leaf. The child's effulgence was swallowing up the darkness. Texts 22-25. The infant's dark blue complexion was the color of a flawless emerald, his lotus face shone with a wealth of beauty, and his throat bore marks like the lines on a conch shell. He had a broad chest, a finely shaped nose, beautiful eyebrows, and lovely ears that resembled pomegranate flowers and that had inner folds like a conch shell spirals. The corners of his eyes were reddish like the whorl of a lotus, and the effulgence of his coralical lips slightly reddened the nectarian, enchanting smile on his face. As he breathed, his splendid hair trembled and his deep navel became distorted by the moving folds of skin on his abdomen, which resembled a banyan leaf. The exalted Brahmana watched with amazement as the infant took hold of one of his lotus feet with his graceful fingers, placed a toe within his mouth and began to suck. Text 26. As Markandeya beheld the child, all his weariness vanished. Indeed, so great was his pleasure that the lotus of his heart, along with his lotus eyes, fully blossomed and the hairs on his body stood on end. Confused as to the identity of the wonderful infant, the sage approached him. Text 27. Just then the child inhaled, drawing Markandeya within his body like a mosquito. There the sage found the entire universe arrayed as it had been before its dissolution. Seeing this, Markandeya was most astonished and perplexed. Texts 28-29, the sage saw the entire universe, the sky, heavens and earth, the stars, mountains, oceans, great islands and continents, the expanses in every direction, the saintly and demoniac living beings, the forests, countries, rivers, cities and mines, the agricultural villages and cow pastures, and the occupational and spiritual activities of the various social divisions. He also saw the basic elements of creation along with all their byproducts, as well as time itself, which regulates the progression of countless ages within the days of Brahma. In addition, he saw everything else created for use in material life. All this he saw manifested before him as if it were real. Text 30, he saw before him the Himalaya mountains, the Puspabhadra river, and his own hermitage, where he had had the audience of the sages Naranarayana. Then, as Markandeya beheld the entire universe, the infant exhaled, expelling the sage from his body and casting him back into the ocean of dissolution. Texts 31-32, in that vast sea he again saw the banyan tree growing on the tiny island and the infant boy lying within the leaf. The child glanced at him from the corner of his eyes with a smile imbued with the nectar of love, and Markandeya took him into his heart through his eyes. Greatly agitated, the sage ran to embrace the transcendental personality of Godhead. Text 33, at that moment the Supreme Personality of Godhead, who is the original master of all mysticism and who is hidden within everyone's heart, became invisible to the sage, just as the achievements of an incompetent person can suddenly vanish. Text 34, after the Lord disappeared, O Brahmana, the banyan tree, the great water and the dissolution of the universe all vanished as well, and in an instant Markandeya found himself back in his own hermitage, just as before. Library Śrīmad Bhāgavatam, Bhagavata Purana, Canto 12, The Age of Deterioration Chapter 10 Lord Shiva and Uma glorify Markandeya RSI. In this chapter Sri Suta Goswami describes how Markandeya RSI received benedictions from Lord Shiva. Once, as Lord Shiva was traveling in the sky with his wife, Parvati, he came across Sri Markandeya immersed in meditative trance. At the request of Parvati, Lord Shiva presented himself before the sage to grant him the result of his austerities. Coming out of his trance, Sri Markandeya saw Lord Shiva, the spiritual master of the three worlds, together with Parvati, and he worshipped them by offering them obeisances, words of greeting and a sitting place. Then Lord Shiva praised the saintly devotees of the personality of Godhead and requested Sri Markandeya to choose whatever benediction he desired. Markandeya begged for unflinching devotion to the Supreme Lord Sri Hari, to the devotees of the Supreme Lord and to Lord Shiva himself. Satisfied with Markandeya's devotion, Lord Shiva awarded him the boons of renown, freedom from old age and death until the time of universal dissolution, knowledge of all three phases of time, renunciation, realized knowledge and the position of a teacher of the Puranas. Those who chant and hear the story of Markandeya RSI will attain liberation from material life, which is based on the accumulated desires generated from fruit of work. Text 1, Suta Goswami said, the Supreme Lord Narayana had arranged this opulent display of his bewildering potency. Markandeya RSI, having experienced it, took shelter of the Lord. Text 2, Sri Markandeya said, O Lord Hari, I take shelter of the soles of your lotus feet, which bestow fearlessness upon all who surrender to them. Even the great demigods are bewildered by your illusory energy, which appears to them in the guise of knowledge. Text 3, Suta Goswami said, Lord Rudra, traveling in the sky on his bull and accompanied by his consort, Rudrani, as well as his personal associates, observed Markandeya in trance. Text 4, Goddess Uma, seeing the sage, addressed Lord Guriza, My lord, just see this learned Brahmana, his body, mind and senses motionless in trance. Text 5, he is as calm as the waters of the ocean when the wind has ceased and the fish remain still. Therefore, my lord, since you bestow perfection on the performers of austerity, please award this sage the perfection that is obviously due him. Text 6, Lord Shiva replied, Surely this saintly Brahmana does not desire any benediction, not even liberation itself, for he has attained pure devotional service unto the inexhaustible personality of Godhead. Text 7, Still, my dear Bhavani, let us talk with this saintly personality. After all, association with saintly devotees is man's highest achievement. Text 8, Suta Goswami said, Having spoken thus, Lord Sankara, the shelter of pure souls, master of all spiritual sciences and controller of all embodied living beings, approached the sage. Text 9, Because Markandeya's material mind had stopped functioning, the sage failed to notice that Lord Shiva and his wife, the controllers of the universe, had personally come to see him. Markandeya was so absorbed in meditation that he was unaware of either himself or the external world. Text 10. Understanding this situation very well, the powerful Lord Shiva employed his mystic power to enter within the sky of Markandeya's heart, just as the wind passes through an opening. Texts 11-13. Sri Markandeya saw Lord Shiva suddenly appear within his heart. Lord Shiva's golden hair resembled lightning, and he had 3 eyes, 10 arms and a tall body that shone like the rising sun. He wore a tiger skin, and he carried a trident, a bow, arrows, a sword and a shield, along with prayer beads, a damaru drum, a skull and an axe. Astonished, the sage came out of his trance and thought, "Who is this, and where has he come from?" Text 14. Opening his eyes, the sage saw Lord Rudra, the spiritual master of the 3 worlds, together with Uma and Rudra's followers. Markandeya then offered his respectful obeisances by bowing his head. Text 15. Markandeya worshipped Lord Shiva, along with Uma and Shiva's associates, by offering them words of welcome, sitting places, water for washing their feet, scented drinking water, fragrant oils, flower garlands and arati lamps. Text 16. Markandeya said, "Almighty Lord, what can I possibly do for you, who are fully satisfied by your own ecstasy? Indeed, by your mercy you satisfy this entire world." Text 17. Again and again I offer my obeisances unto you, O all-auspicious transcendental personality. As the Lord of goodness you give pleasure, in contact with the mode of passion you appear most fearful, and you also associate with the mode of ignorance. Text 18. Suta Goswami said, Lord Shiva, the foremost demigod and the shelter of the saintly devotees, was satisfied by Markandeya's praise. Pleased, he smiled and addressed the sage. Text 19. Lord Shiva said, "Please ask me for some benediction, since among all givers of benedictions, we 3, Brahma, Vishnu and I, are the best. Seeing us never goes in vain, because simply by seeing us a mortal achieves immortality." Texts 20-21. The inhabitants and ruling demigods of all planets, along with Lord Brahma, the Supreme Lord Hari and I, glorify, worship and assist those Brahmanas who are saintly, always peaceful, free of material attachment, compassionate to all living beings, purely devoted to us, devoid of hatred and endowed with equal vision. Text 22. These devotees do not differentiate between Lord Vishnu, Lord Brahma and me, nor do they differentiate between themselves and other living beings. Therefore, because you are this kind of saintly devotee, we worship you. Text 23. Mere bodies of water do not constitute holy places, nor are lifeless statues of the demigods actual worshipable deities. Because external vision fails to appreciate the higher essence of the holy rivers and the demigods, these purify only after a considerable time. But devotees like you purify immediately, just by being seen. Text 24. By meditating upon the Supreme Soul, performing austerities, engaging in Vedic study and following regulative principles, the Brahmanas sustain within themselves the 3 Vedas, which are non-different from Lord Vishnu, Lord Brahma and me. Therefore I offer my obeisances unto the Brahmanas. Text 25. Even the worst sinners and social outcasts are purified just by hearing about or seeing personalities like you. Imagine, then, how purified they become by directly speaking with you. Text 26. Suta Goswami said, drinking with his ears Lord Shiva's nectarian words, full of the confidential essence of religion, Markandeya RSI could not be satiated. Text 27. Markandeya, having been forced by Lord Vishnu's illusory energy to wander about for a long time in the water of dissolution, had become extremely exhausted. But Lord Shiva's words of nectar vanquished his accumulated suffering. Thus he addressed Lord Shiva. Text 28. Sri Markandeya said, "It is indeed most difficult for embodied souls to understand the pastimes of the universal controllers, for such lords bow down to and offer praise to the very living beings they rule." Text 29. Generally it is to induce embodied souls to accept religious principles that the authorized teachers of religion exhibit ideal behavior while encouraging and praising the proper behavior of others. Text 30. This apparent humility is simply a show of mercy. Such behavior of the Supreme Lord and his personal associates, which the Lord effects by his own bewildering potency, does not spoil his power any more than a magician's powers are diminished by his exhibition of tricks. Texts 31-32. I offer my obeisances to that Supreme Personality of Godhead, who has created this entire universe simply by his desire and then entered into it as the Supersoul. By making the modes of nature act, he seems to be the direct creator of this world, just as a dreamer seems to be acting within his dream. He is the owner and ultimate controller of the 3 modes of nature, yet he remains alone and pure, without any equal. He is the supreme spiritual master of all, the original personal form of the Absolute Truth. Text 33. O all-pervading Lord, since I have received the benediction of seeing you, what other benediction can I ask for? Simply by seeing you, a person fulfills all his desires and can achieve anything imaginable. Text 34, but I do request one benediction from you, who are full of all perfection and able to shower down the fulfillment of all desires. I ask to have unfailing devotion for the Supreme Personality of Godhead and for His dedicated devotees, especially you. Text 35, Suta Goswami said, thus worshipped and glorified by the eloquent statements of the sage Markandeya, Lord Sarva, Shiva, encouraged by his consort, replied to him as follows. Text 36, O great sage, because you are devoted to Lord Adhoksaja, all your desires will be fulfilled. Until the very end of this creation cycle, you will enjoy pious fame and freedom from old age and death. Text 37, O Brahmana, may you have perfect knowledge of past, present and future, along with transcendental realization of the Supreme, enriched by renunciation. You have the brilliance of an ideal Brahmana, and thus may you achieve the post of spiritual master of the Puranas. Text 38, Suta Goswami said, having thus granted Markandeya RSI benedictions, Lord Shiva went on his way, continuing to describe to Goddess Devi the accomplishments of the sage and the direct exhibition of the Lord's illusory power that he had experienced. Text 39, Markandeya RSI, the best of the descendants of Bhrigu, is glorious because of his achievement of perfection in mystic yoga. Even today he travels about this world, fully absorbed in unalloyed devotion for the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Text 40, I have thus narrated to you the activities of the highly intelligent sage Markandeya, especially how he experienced the amazing power of the Supreme Lord's illusory energy. Text 41, although this event was unique and unprecedented, some unintelligent persons compare it to the cycle of illusory material existence the Supreme Lord has created for the conditioned souls, an endless cycle that has been continuing since time immemorial. Text 42, O best of the Bhrigus, this account concerning Markandeya RSI conveys the transcendental potency of the Supreme Lord. Anyone who properly narrates or hears it will never again undergo material existence, which is based on the desire to perform fruitive activities. Library Śrīmad Bhāgavatam, Bhagavata Purana, Canto 12, The Age of Deterioration Chapter 11 Summary description of the Mahapurusa in the context of worship. This chapter describes the Mahapurusa and the various expansions of the sun in each month. Sri Suta first tells Sanaka RSI about the material objects through which one can understand the major limbs, the secondary limbs, the weapons and the garments of Lord Sri Hari. Then he outlines the process of practical service by which a mortal soul can attain immortality. When Sanaka shows further interest in learning about the expansion of Lord Hari in the form of the sun god, Suta replies that Lord Sri Hari, the indwelling controller of the universe and its original creator, manifests himself in the form of the demigod of the sun. Sages describe this sun god in many features according to his different material designations. To sustain the world, the personality of Godhead manifests his potency of time as the sun and travels throughout the 12 months, beginning with Kaitra, along with 12 sets of personal associates. One who remembers the opulences of the personality of Godhead Sri Hari in his form as the sun will become free of his sinful reactions. Text 1, Sri Sanaka said, O Suta, you are the best of learned men and a great devotee of the Supreme Lord. Therefore we now inquire from you about the definitive conclusion of all Tantra scriptures. Texts 2-3, all good fortune to you. Please explain to us, who are very eager to learn, the process of Kriya Yoga practice through regulated worship of the Transcendental Lord, the husband of the Goddess of Fortune. Please also explain how the Lord's devotees conceive of his limbs, associates, weapons and ornaments in terms of particular material representations. By expertly worshipping the Supreme Lord, a mortal can attain immortality. Text 4, Suta Goswami said, offering obeisances to my spiritual masters, I shall repeat to you the description of the opulences of Lord Vishnu given in the Vedas and Tantras by great authorities, beginning from lotus-born Brahma. Text 5, the universal form, Virat, of the personality of Godhead includes the 9 basic elements of creation, starting with the unmanifest nature, and their subsequent transformations. Once this universal form is instilled with consciousness, the 3 planetary systems become visible within it. Text 6-8, this is the representation of the Supreme Lord as the universal person, in which the earth is his feet, the sky his navel, the sun his eyes, the wind his nostrils, the demigod of procreation his genitals, death his anus and the moon his mind. The heavenly planets are his head, the directions his ears, and the demigods protecting the various planets his many arms. The god of death is his eyebrows, shame his lower lip, greed his upper lip, delusion his smile, and moonshine his teeth, while the trees are the Almighty Purusa's bodily hairs, and the clouds the hair on his head. Text 9. Just as one can determine the dimensions of an ordinary person of this world by measuring his various limbs, one can determine the dimensions of the Maha Purusa by measuring the arrangement of the planetary systems within his universal form. Text 10. Upon his chest the Almighty, unborn personality of Godhead bears the Kaustuba gem, which represents the pure spirit soul, along with the Srivatsa mark, which is the direct manifestation of this gem's expansive effulgence. Texts 11-12. His flower garland is his material energy, comprising various combinations of the modes of nature. His yellow garment is the Vedic meters, and his sacred thread the syllable Om composed of 3 sounds. In the form of his 2 shark-shaped earrings, the Lord carries the processes of Sankhya and Yoga, and his crown, bestowing fearlessness on the inhabitants of all the worlds, is the supreme position of Brahmaloka. Text 13. Ananta, the Lord's sitting place, is the unmanifest phase of material nature, and the Lord's lotus throne is the mode of goodness, endowed with religion and knowledge. Texts 14-15. The club the Lord carries is the chief element, prana, incorporating the potencies of sensory, mental and physical strength. His excellent conch shell is the element water, his sudarsana disc the element fire, and his sword, pure as the sky, the element ether. His shield embodies the mode of ignorance, his bow, named Surga, time, and his arrow-filled quiver the working sensory organs. Text 16. His arrows are said to be the senses, and his chariot is the active, forceful mind. His external appearance is the subtle objects of perception, and the gestures of his hands are the essence of all purposeful activity. Text 17. The sun globe is the place where the Supreme Lord is worshipped. Spiritual initiation is the means of purification for the spirit soul, and rendering devotional service to the personality of Godhead is the process for eradicating all one's sinful reactions. Text 18. Playfully carrying a lotus, which represents the various opulences designated by the word Bhaga, the Supreme Lord accepts service from a pair of Kamara fans, which are religion and fame. Text 19. O Brahmanas, the Lord's umbrella is his spiritual abode, Vakunta, where there is no fear, and Garuda, who carries the Lord of Sacrifice, is the threefold Veda. Text 20. The goddess of fortune, Sri, who never leaves the Lord's side, appears with him in this world as the representation of his internal potency. Visvaksena, the chief among his personal associates, is known to be the personification of the Pancaratra and other tantras. And the Lord's 8 doorkeepers, headed by Nanda, are his mystic perfections, beginning with Anima. Text 21. Vasudeva, Sankarsana, Pradyumna and Aniruddha are the names of the direct personal expansions of the Supreme Godhead, O Brahmana Sanaka. Text 22. One can conceive of the Supreme Personality of Godhead in terms of awakened consciousness, sleep and deep sleep, which function respectively through external objects, the mind and material intelligence, and also in terms of the 4th, transcendental level of consciousness, which is characterized by pure knowledge. Text 23. The Supreme Personality of Godhead, Lord Hari, thus appears in 4 personal expansions, each exhibiting major limbs, minor limbs, weapons and ornaments. Through these distinct features, the Lord maintains the 4 phases of existence. Text 24. O best of Brahmanas, he alone is the self-luminous, original source of the Vedas, perfect and complete in his own glory. By his material energy he creates, destroys and maintains this entire universe. Because he is the performer of various material functions, he is sometimes described as materially divided, yet he always remains transcendentally situated in pure knowledge. Those who are dedicated to him in devotion can realize him to be their true soul. Text 25. O Krishna, O friend of Arjuna, O chief among the descendants of Vrisni, you are the destroyer of those political parties that are disturbing elements on this earth. Your prowess never deteriorates. You are the proprietor of the transcendental abode, and your most sacred glories, which are sung by Vrindavan as cowherd men and women and their servants, bestow all auspiciousness just by being heard. O Lord, please protect your devotees. Text 26. Anyone who rises early in the morning and, with a purified mind fixed upon the Mahapurusa, quietly chants this description of his characteristics will realize him as the supreme absolute truth residing within the heart. Texts 27-28, Sri Sanaka said, please describe to us, who have great faith in your words, the different sets of 7 personal features and associates the sun god exhibits during each month, along with their names and activities. The associates of the sun god, who serve their Lord, are personal expansions of the Supreme Personality of Godhead Hari and his feature as the presiding deity of the sun. Text 29. Suta Goswami said, the sun travels among all the planets and thus regulates their movements. It has been created by Lord Vishnu, the supreme soul of all embodied beings, through his beginningless material energy. Text 30, the Sun God, being non-different from Lord Hari, is the one soul of all the worlds and their original creator. He is the source of all the ritualistic activities prescribed in the Vedas and has been given many names by the Vedic sages. Text 31, being the source of the material energy, the personality of Godhead Lord Hari and his expansion as the Sun God is described in 9 aspects, O Sanaka, the time, the place, the endeavor, the performer, the instrument, the specific ritual, the scripture, the paraphernalia of worship and the result to be achieved. Text 32, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, manifesting his potency of time as the Sun God, travels about in each of the 12 months, beginning with Madhu, to regulate planetary motion within the universe. Traveling with the Sun God in each of the 12 months is a different set of 6 associates. Text 33, my dear sage, Dada as the Sun God, Kritasthali as the Apsara, Hedi as the Rakshasa, Vasuki as the Naga, Rathakrit as the Yaksa, Palashta as the sage and Tumbaru as the Gandharva rule the month of Madhu. Text 34, Aryama as the Sun God, Pulaha as the sage, Atauja as the Yaksa, Praeti as the Rakshasa, Punjiksthali as the Apsara, Narada as the Gandharva and Kakanira as the Naga rule the month of Madhava. Text 35, Mitra as the Sun God, Atri as the sage, Purasaya as the Rakshasa, Tiksaka as the Naga, Manaka as the Apsara, Haha as the Gandharva and Rethasvana as the Yaksa rule the month of Shukra. Text 36, Vashishta as the sage, Varuna as the Sun God, Ramba as the Apsara, Sahayanya as the Rakshasa, Hu as the Gandharva, Shukra as the Naga and Citrasvana as the Yaksa rule the month of Suchi. Text 37, Indra as the Sun God, Visvavasu as the Gandharva, Srota as the Yaksa, Alapatra as the Naga, Angira as the sage, Pramlaka as the Apsara and Varya as the Rakshasa rule the month of Nabas. Text 38, Vivasvan as the Sun God, Ugrasenya as the Gandharva, Vyagra as the Rakshasa, Asarana as the Yaksa, Braghu as the sage, Anamlaka as the Apsara and Sankapala as the Naga rule the month of Nabthasaya. Text 39, Pusa as the Sun God, Dhananjaya as the Naga, Vana as the Rakshasa, Susana as the Gandharva, Shurasai as the Yaksa, Ghrtaci as the Apsara and Gautama as the sage rule the month of Tapas. Text 40, Rtu as the Yaksa, Varka as the Rakshasa, Bharadvaja as the sage, Prajunya as the Sun God, Senayit as the Apsara, Visva as the Gandharva and Airavata as the Naga rule the month known as Tapasya. Text 41, Amsu as the Sun God, Kasyapa as the sage, Tarksya as the Yaksa, Ratasania as the Gandharva, Urvasi as the Apsara, Vidyakatru as the Rakshasa and Mahusanka as the Naga rule the month of Sahas. Text 42, Bhaga as the Sun God, Sphurya as the Rakshasa, Aristonemi as the Gandharva, Urna as the Yaksa, Ayur as the sage, Karkotaka as the Naga and Praveshti as the Apsara rule the month of Pusya. Text 43, Tvasta as the Sun God, Jamadagni, the son of Rasika, as the sage, Kambalasva as the Naga, Tilotama as the Apsara, Brahmapita as the Rakshasa, Satajit as the Yaksa, and Dhritarashtra as the Gandharva maintain the month of Isa. Text 44, Vishnu as the Sun God, Asvatara as the Naga, Ramba as the Apsara, Suryavarka as the Gandharva, Satyajit as the Yaksa, Vaisvamitra as the sage and Makapita as the Rakshasa rule the month of Urya. Text 45, all these personalities are the opulent expansions of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Vishnu, in the form of the Sun God. These deities take away all the sinful reactions of those who remember them each day at dawn and sunset. Text 46, thus, throughout the 12 months, the Lord of the Sun travels in all directions with his 6 types of associates, disseminating among the inhabitants of this universe purity of consciousness for both this life and the next. Texts 47-48, while the sages glorify the Sun God with the hymns of the Sama, RG, and Yajurvedas, which reveal his identity, the Gandharvas also sing his praises and the Asparas dance before his chariot. The Nagas arrange the chariot ropes and the Yaksas harness the horses to the chariot, while the powerful Rakshasas push from behind. Text 49, facing the chariot, the 60,000 Brahmana sages known as Valakalyas travel in front and offer prayers to the Almighty Sun God with Vedic mantras. Text 50, for the protection of all the worlds, the Supreme Personality of Godhead Hari, who is unborn and without beginning or end, thus expands himself during each day of Brahma into these specific categories of his personal representations. Library Śrīmad Bhāgavatam, Bhagavata Purana, Canto 12, The Age of Deterioration Chapter 12. The topics of Śrīmad Bhāgavatam summarized in this chapter. Sri Suta Goswami summarizes the subjects discussed in Śrīmad Bhāgavatam. The Supreme Lord, Sri Hari, personally removes all the distress of a person who hears about his glories. Whatever words glorify the innumerable transcendental qualities of the personality of Godhead are truthful, auspicious and conducive to piety, whereas all other words are impure. Discussions of topics concerning the Supreme Lord bestow ecstasy, which remains constantly new, but persons who are like crows become absorbed in unessential topics, those unrelated to the personality of Godhead. By chanting and hearing the countless names of Lord Sri Hari, which describe his glorious qualities, all human beings can be relieved of their sins. Neither knowledge devoid of devotion for Lord Vishnu nor fruit of work not offered to him have any real beauty. By constant remembrance of Lord Krishna, on the other hand, all one's inauspicious desires are destroyed, one's mind is purified, and one attains devotion for Lord Sri Hari along with knowledge filled with realization and detachment. Suta Goswami then states that previously, in the assembly of Maharaja Pariksit, he heard from the mouth of Sri Sukadeva the glories of Sri Krishna, which annihilate all sinful reactions, and that now he has related these glories to the sages at Naimisaranya. By hearing Śrīmad Bhāgavatam, the spirit soul is purified and obtains salvation from all sins and all kinds of fear. Through the study of this scripture, one achieves the same result as that achieved by one who studies all the Vedas, and one also achieves the fulfillment of all desires. By studying with a controlled mind this essential compilation of all the Puranas, one will reach the supreme abode of the personality of Godhead. Every verse of this scripture, Śrīmad Bhāgavatam, contains the narrations of Lord Sri Hari, who has innumerable personal forms. Finally, Sri Suta offers obeisances to the unborn and unlimited Supreme Soul, Sri Krishna, as well as to Sri Sukadeva, the son of Vyasa, who is capable of destroying the sins of all living beings. Text 1, Suta Goswami said, offering my obeisances to the supreme religious principle, devotional service, to Lord Krishna, the supreme creator, and to all the Brahmanas, I shall now describe the eternal principles of religion. Text 2, O great sages, I have narrated to you the wonderful pastimes of Lord Vishnu, as you inquired about them from me. Hearing such narrations is the suitable engagement for a person who is actually a human being. Text 3, this literature fully glorifies the Supreme Personality of Godhead Hari, who removes all his devotees' sinful reactions. The Lord is glorified as Narayana, Rishikesa and the Lord of the Sattvatas. Text 4, this literature describes the mystery of the Supreme Absolute Truth, the source of the creation and annihilation of this universe. Also presented are divine knowledge of him together with the process of its cultivation, and the transcendental realization one achieves. Text 5, the following topics are also narrated, the process of devotional service together with its subsidiary feature of renunciation, and the histories of Maharaja Pariksit and the sage Narada. Text 6, also described are saintly King Pariksit sitting down to fast until death in response to the curse of a Brahmana's son, and the conversations between Pariksit and Sukadeva Goswami, who is the best of all Brahmanas. Text 7, the Bhagavatam explains how one can attain liberation at the time of death by practicing fixed meditation in yoga. It also contains a discussion between Narada and Brahma, an enumeration of the incarnations of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, and a description of how the universe was created in progressive sequence, beginning from the unmanifest stage of material nature. Text 8, this scripture also relates the discussions Vidura had with Uddhava and with Maitreya, inquiries about the subject matter of this Purana, and the winding up of creation within the body of the Supreme Lord at the time of annihilation. Text 9, the creation effected by the agitation of the modes of material nature, the 7 stages of evolution by elemental transformation, and the construction of the universal egg, from which arises the universal form of the Supreme Lord, all these are thoroughly described. Text 10, other topics include the subtle and gross movements of time, the generation of the lotus from the navel of Garbhodakasaya Vishnu, and the killing of the demon Hiranyaksha when the earth was delivered from the Garbhodak ocean. Text 11, the Bhagavatam also describes the creation of demigods, animals and demoniac species of life, the birth of Lord Rudra, and the appearance of Svayam Bhagavan from the half-man, half-woman Asvara. Text 12, also related are the appearance of the first woman, Satarupa, who was the excellent consort of Manu, and the offspring of the pious wives of Prajapati Kardama. Text 13, the Bhagavatam describes the incarnation of the Supreme Personality of Godhead as the exalted sage Kapila and records the conversation between the greatly learned soul and his mother, Devahuti. Texts 14 to 15, also described are the progeny of the 9 great Brahmanas, the destruction of Daksa's sacrifice, and the history of Dhruva Maharaja, followed by the histories of King Prithu and King Prasanabarhi, the discussion between Prasanabarhi and Narada, and the life of Maharaja Priyavrata. Then, O Brahmanas, the Bhagavatam tells of the character and activities of King Nabhi, Lord Rishabha, and King Bharata. Text 16. The Bhagavatam gives an elaborate description of the earth's continents, regions, oceans, mountains and rivers. Also described are the arrangement of the celestial sphere and the conditions found in the subterranean regions and in hell. Text 17. The rebirth of Prajapati Daksa is the son of the Prasatas, and the progeny of Daksa's daughters, who initiated the races of demigods, demons, human beings, animals, serpents, birds and so on. All this is described. Text 18. O Brahmanas, also recounted are the births and deaths of Vritrasura and of deities' sons Hiranyaksha and Hiranyakasipu, as well as the history of the greatest of deities' descendants, the exalted soul Prahlada. Text 19. The reign of each Manu, the liberation of Gajendra, and the special incarnations of Lord Vishnu in each Manvantara, such as Lord Hyasarsa, are described as well. Text 20. The Bhagavatam also tells of the appearances of the Lord of the universe as Kurma, Matsya, Narasimha, and Vamana, and of the demigods churning of the milk ocean to obtain nectar. Text 21. An account of the great battle fought between the demigods and the demons, a systematic description of the dynasties of various kings, and narrations concerning Ikshvaku's birth, his dynasty and the dynasty of the pious Sudyamna, all are presented within this literature. Text 22. Also related are the histories of Ela and Tara, and the description of the descendants of the sun god, including such kings as Sasata and Nrga. Text 23. The histories of Sukanya, Saryati, the intelligent Kakutstha, Katvanga, Mandhata, Saubari and Sagara are narrated. Text 24. The Bhagavatam narrates the sanctifying pastimes of Lord Ramacandra, the king of Kosala, and also explains how King Nimi abandoned his material body. The appearance of the descendants of King Janaka is also mentioned. Texts 25-26. The Śrīmad Bhāgavatam describes how Lord Parasurama, the greatest descendant of Bhrigu, annihilated all the Kshatriyas on the face of the earth. It further recounts the lives of glorious kings who appeared in the dynasty of the moon god, kings such as Ila, Yayati, Nausa, Dusmanda's son Bharata, Santanu and Santanu's son Bhisma. Also described is the great dynasty founded by King Yadu, the eldest son of Yayati. Text 27. How Sri Krishna, the Supreme Personality of Godhead and Lord of the Universe, descended into this Yadu dynasty, how he took birth in the home of Vasudeva, and how he then grew up in Gokula. All this is described in detail. Texts 28-29, also glorified are the innumerable pastimes of Sri Krishna, the enemy of the demons, including his childhood pastimes of sucking out Patana's life air along with her breast milk, breaking the cart, trampling down Trinavarta, killing Bakasura, Vatsasura, and Agasura, and the pastimes he enacted when Lord Brahma hid his calves and cowherd boyfriends in a cave. Text 30. The Śrīmad Bhāgavatam tells how Lord Krishna and Lord Balarama killed the demon Dhanukasura and his companions, how Lord Balarama destroyed Pralambasura, and also how Krishna saved the cowherd boys from a raging forest fire that had encircled them. Texts 31-33, the chastisement of the serpent Kaliya, the rescue of Nanda Maharaja from a great snake, the severe vows performed by the young Gopas, who thus satisfied Lord Krishna, the mercy he showed the wives of the Vedic Brahmanas, who felt remorse, the lifting of Govardhana hill followed by the worship and bathing ceremony performed by Indra and the Surabhi cow, Lord Krishna's nocturnal pastimes with the cowherd girls, and the killing of the foolish demons Sankakuta, Arista and Kesi. All these pastimes are elaborately recounted. Text 34. The Bhagavatam describes the arrival of Akrura, the subsequent departure of Krishna and Balarama, the lamentation of the Gopas and the touring of Mathura. Text 35. Also narrated are how Krishna and Balarama killed the elephant Kuvalayapita, the wrestlers Mustaka and Kanyura, and Kamsa and other demons, as well as how Krishna brought back the dead son of his spiritual master, Sandipani Muni. Text 36. Then, O Brahmanas, this scripture recounts how Lord Hari, while residing in Mathura in the company of Uddhava and Balarama, performed pastimes for the satisfaction of the Yadu dynasty. Text 37. Also described are the annihilation of each of the many armies brought by Jarasandha, the killing of the barbarian king Kalayavana and the establishment of Dwaraka city. Text 38. This work also describes how Lord Krishna brought from heaven the Parijata tree and the Sudharma assembly hall, and how he kidnapped Rukmini by defeating all his rivals in battle. Text 39. Also narrated are how Lord Krishna, in the battle with Banasura, defeated Lord Shiva by making him Yuan, how the Lord cut off Banasura's arms, and how he killed the master of Pragyotisapura and then rescued the young princesses held captive in that city. Texts 40-41, there are descriptions of the powers and the deaths of the king of Sati, Pandraka, Salva, the foolish Danavakra, Sambara, Devavada, Pita, Mora, Pankayana and other demons, along with a description of how Varanasi was burned to the ground. The Bhagavatam also recounts how Lord Krishna relieved the earth's burden by engaging the Pandavas in the battle of Kurukshetra. Texts 42-43, how the Lord withdrew his own dynasty on the pretext of the Brahmana's curse, Vasudeva's conversation with Narada, the extraordinary conversation between Uddhava and Krishna, which reveals the science of the self in complete detail and elucidates the religious principles of human society, and then how Lord Krishna gave up this mortal world by his own mystic power. The Bhagavatam narrates all these events. Text 44, this work also describes people's characteristics and behavior in the different ages, the chaos men experience in the age of Kali, the 4 kinds of annihilation and the 3 kinds of creation. Text 45, there are also an account of the passing away of the wise and saintly King Visnurata, Pariksit, an explanation of how Srila Vyasadeva disseminated the branches of the Vedas, a pious narration concerning Markandeya Rsi, and a description of the detailed arrangement of the Lord's universal form in his form as the sun, the soul of the universe. Text 46, thus, O best of the Brahmanas, I have explained herein what you have inquired from me. This literature has glorified in full detail the activities of the Lord's pastime incarnations. Text 47, if when falling, slipping, feeling pain or sneezing one involuntarily cries out in a loud voice, obeisances to Lord Hari, one will be automatically freed from all his sinful reactions. Text 48, when people properly glorify the Supreme Personality of Godhead or simply hear about his power, the Lord personally enters their hearts and cleanses away every trace of misfortune, just as the sun removes the darkness or as a powerful wind drives away the clouds. Text 49, words that do not describe the transcendental personality of Godhead but instead deal with temporary matters are simply false and useless. Only those words that manifest the transcendental qualities of the Supreme Lord are actually truthful, auspicious and pious. Text 50, those words describing the glories of the all-famous personality of Godhead are attractive, relishable and ever fresh. Indeed, such words are a perpetual festival for the mind, and they dry up the ocean of misery. Text 51, those words that do not describe the glories of the Lord, who alone can sanctify the atmosphere of the whole universe, are considered to be like unto a place of pilgrimage for crows, and are never resorted to by those situated in transcendental knowledge. The pure and saintly devotees take interest only in topics glorifying the infallible Supreme Lord. Text 52, on the other hand, that literature which is full of descriptions of the transcendental glories of the name, fame, forms, pastimes and so on of the unlimited Supreme Lord is a different creation, full of transcendental words directed toward bringing about a revolution in the impious lives of this world's misdirected civilization. Such transcendental literatures, even though imperfectly composed, are heard, sung and accepted by purified men who are thoroughly honest. Text 53, knowledge of self-realization, even though free from all material affinity, does not look well if devoid of a conception of the infallible God. What, then, is the use of even the most properly performed fruitive activities, which are naturally painful from the very beginning and transient by nature, if they are not utilized for the devotional service of the Lord? Text 54, the great endeavor one undergoes in executing the ordinary social and religious duties of the Varnasrama system, in performing austerities, and in hearing from the Vedas culminates only in the achievement of mundane fame and opulence. But by respecting and attentively hearing the recitation of the transcendental qualities of the Supreme Lord, the husband of the goddess of fortune, one can remember his lotus feet. Text 55, remembrance of Lord Krishna's lotus feet destroys everything inauspicious and awards the greatest good fortune. It purifies the heart and bestows devotion for the Supreme Soul, along with knowledge enriched with realization and renunciation. Text 56, O most eminent of Brahmanas, you are all indeed extremely fortunate, since you have already placed within your hearts Lord Sri Narayana, the personality of Godhead, the supreme controller and the ultimate soul of all existence, beyond whom there is no other God. You have undeviating love for him, and thus I request you to worship him. Text 57, I also have now been fully reminded of the science of God, which I previously heard from the mouth of the great sage Sukadeva Goswami. I was present in the assembly of great sages who heard him speak to King Pariksit as the monarch sat fasting until death. Text 58, O Brahmanas, I have thus described to you the glories of the Supreme Lord Vasudeva, whose extraordinary activities are most worthy of glorification. This narration destroys all that is inauspicious. Text 59, One who with undeviating attention constantly recites this literature at every moment of every hour, as well as one who faithfully hears even one verse or half a verse or a single line or even half a line, certainly purifies his very self. Text 60. One who hears this Bhagavatam on the Ekadashi or Dvadasi day is assured of long life, and one who recites it with careful attention while fasting is purified of all sinful reactions. Text 61. One who controls his mind, fasts at the holy places Puskara, Mathura or Dvaraka, and studies this scripture will be freed from all fear. Text 62. Upon the person who glorifies this Purana by chanting or hearing it, the demigods, sages, siddhas, pitas, manas and kings of the earth bestow all desirable things. Text 63. By studying this Bhagavatam, a Brahmana can enjoy the same rivers of honey, ghee and milk he enjoys by studying the hymns of the Arji, Yajur, and Samavedas. Text 64. A Brahmana who diligently reads this essential compilation of all the Puranas will go to the supreme destination, which the Supreme Lord himself has herein described. Text 65. A Brahmana who studies the Śrīmad Bhāgavatam achieves firm intelligence in devotional service. A king who studies it gains sovereignty over the earth, a Vaisya acquires great treasure and a Sudra is freed from sinful reactions. Text 66. Lord Hari, the supreme controller of all beings, annihilates the accumulated sins of the Kali age, yet other literatures do not constantly glorify him. But that Supreme Personality of Godhead, appearing in his innumerable personal expansions, is abundantly and constantly described throughout the various narrations of the Śrīmad Bhāgavatam. Text 67. I bow down to that unborn and infinite Supreme Soul, whose personal energies affect the creation, maintenance and destruction of the material universe. Even Brahma, Indra, Sankara and the other lords of the heavenly planets cannot fathom the glories of that infallible personality of Godhead. Text 68. I offer my obeisances to the Supreme Personality of Godhead, who is the eternal Lord and the leader of all other deities, who by evolving his 9 material energies has arranged within himself the abode of all moving and non-moving creatures, and who is always situated in pure, transcendental consciousness. Text 69. Let me offer my respectful obeisances unto my spiritual master, the son of Vyasadeva, Sukadeva Goswami. It is he who defeats all inauspicious things within this universe. Although in the beginning he was absorbed in the happiness of Brahman realization and was living in a secluded place, giving up all other types of consciousness, he became attracted by the pleasing, most melodious pastimes of Lord Sri Krishna. He therefore mercifully spoke this supreme Purana, Śrīmad Bhāgavatam, which is the bright light of the absolute truth and which describes the activities of the Lord. Library Śrīmad Bhāgavatam, Bhagavata Purana, Canto 12, The Age of Deterioration Chapter 13 The glories of Śrīmad Bhāgavatam. In this final chapter Sri Suta Goswami describes the length of each of the Puranas, along with the subject matter of Śrīmad Bhāgavatam, its purpose, how to give it as a gift, the glories of such gift-giving and the glories of chanting and hearing it. The total corpus of the Puranas includes 400,000 verses, 18,000 of which constitute Śrīmad Bhāgavatam. The Supreme Personality of Godhead, Narayana, instructed Brahma in the Śrīmad Bhāgavatam, whose narrations produce detachment from matter and which contains the essence of all the Vedanta. One who gives the Śrīmad Bhagavata Purana as a gift will attain the highest destination. Among all the Puranas, Śrīmad Bhāgavatam is the best, and it is the most dear thing to the Vaisnavas. It reveals that spotless, supreme knowledge accessible to the Paramamsas, and it also reveals the process by which one can become free from the reactions of material work, a process enriched with knowledge, renunciation and devotion. Having thus glorified the Bhagavatam, Suta Goswami meditates upon Lord Sri Narayana as the original absolute truth, who is perfectly pure, free from all contamination, devoid of sorrow and immortal. Then he offers obeisances to the greatest yogi, Sri Sukadeva, who is non-different from the absolute truth. Finally, praying with true devotion, Suta Goswami offers respects to the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Lord Sri Hari, who takes away all misery. Text 1. Suta Goswami said, Unto that personality whom Brahma, Varuna, Indra, Rudra and the Maruts praise by chanting transcendental hymns and reciting the Vedas with all their corollaries, Padakramas and Upanishads, to whom the chanters of the Samaveda always sing, whom the perfected yogis see within their minds after fixing themselves in trance and absorbing themselves within him, and whose limit can never be found by any demigod or demon, unto that Supreme Personality of Godhead I offer my humble obeisances. Text 2. When the Supreme Personality of Godhead appeared as Lord Kurma, a tortoise, his back was scratched by the sharp-edged stones lying on massive, whirling Mount Mandara, and this scratching made the Lord sleepy. May you all be protected by the winds caused by the Lord's breathing in the sleepy condition. Ever since that time, Even up to the present day, the ocean tides have imitated the Lord's inhalation and exhalation by piously coming in and going out. Text 3. Now please hear a summation of the verse length of each of the Puranas. Then hear of the prime subject and purpose of this Bhagavata Purana, the proper method of giving it as a gift, the glories of such gift-giving, and finally the glories of hearing and chanting this literature. Texts 4-9. The Brahma Purana consists of 10,000 verses, the Padma Purana of 55,000, Sri Vishnu Purana of 23,000, the Shiva Purana of 24,000 and Śrīmad Bhāgavatam of 18,000. The Narada Purana has 25,000 verses, the Markandeya Purana 9,000, the Agni Purana 15,400, the Bhavasya Purana 14,500, the Brahmavaivarta Purana 18,000 and the Linga Purana 11,000. The Varaha Purana contains 24,000 verses, the Skanda Purana 81,100, the Vamana Purana 10,000, the Kurma Purana 17,000, the Matsya Purana 14,000, the Garuda Purana 19,000 and the Brahmanda Purana 12,000. Thus the total number of verses in all the Puranas is 400,000. 18,000 of these, once again, belong to the beautiful Bhagavatam. Text 10. It was to Lord Brahma that the Supreme Personality of Godhead first revealed the Śrīmad Bhāgavatam in full. At the time, Brahma, frightened by material existence, was sitting on the lotus flower that had grown from the Lord's navel. Texts 11-12. From beginning to end, the Śrīmad Bhāgavatam is full of narrations that encourage renunciation of material life, as well as nectarian accounts of Lord Hari's transcendental pastimes, which give ecstasy to the saintly devotees and demigods. This Bhagavatam is the essence of all Vedanta philosophy because its subject matter is the absolute truth, which, while non-different from the spirit soul, is the ultimate reality, one without a second. The goal of this literature is exclusive devotional service unto that supreme truth. Text 13. If on the full moon day of the month of Bhadra one places Śrīmad Bhāgavatam on a golden throne and gives it as a gift, he will attain the supreme transcendental destination. Text 14. All other Puranic scriptures shine forth in the assembly of saintly devotees only as long as that great ocean of nectar, Śrīmad Bhāgavatam, is not heard. Text 15. Śrīmad Bhāgavatam is declared to be the essence of all Vedanta philosophy. One who has felt satisfaction from its nectarian mellow will never be attracted to any other literature. Text 16. Just as the Ganga is the greatest of all rivers, Lord Achyuta the supreme among deities and Lord Shambha, Shiva, the greatest of Vaisnavas, so Śrīmad Bhāgavatam is the greatest of all Puranas. Text 17. O Brahmanas, in the same way that the city of Kasi is unexcelled among holy places, Śrīmad Bhāgavatam is supreme among all the Puranas. Text 18. Śrīmad Bhāgavatam is the spotless Purana. It is most dear to the Vaisnavas because it describes the pure and supreme knowledge of the Paramamsas. This Bhagavatam reveals the means for becoming free from all material work, together with the processes of transcendental knowledge, renunciation and devotion. Anyone who seriously tries to understand Śrīmad Bhāgavatam, who properly hears and chants it with devotion, becomes completely liberated. Text 19. I meditate upon that pure and spotless supreme absolute truth, who is free from suffering and death and who in the beginning personally revealed this incomparable torchlight of knowledge to Brahma. Brahma then spoke it to the sage Narada, who narrated it to Krishna Dvaipayana Vyasa. Srila Vyasa revealed this Bhagavatam to the greatest of sages, Sukadeva Goswami, and Sukadeva mercifully spoke it to Maharaja Pariksit. Text 20. We offer our obeisances to the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Lord Vasudeva, the all-pervading witness, who mercifully explained this science to Brahma when he anxiously desired salvation. Text 21. I offer my humble obeisances to Sri Sukadeva Goswami, the best of mystic sages and a personal manifestation of the absolute truth. He saved Maharaja Pariksit, who was bitten by the snake of material existence. Text 22. O Lord of Lords, O Master, please grant us pure devotional service at your lotus feet, life after life. Text 23. I offer my respectful obeisances unto the Supreme Lord, Hari, the congregational chanting of whose holy names destroys all sinful reactions, and the offering of obeisances unto whom relieves all material suffering.